Chapter 68. At that moment, Wuming made a feint and pulled away from Frankenstein and Vlad 3. Vlad 3 also stopped Frankenstein, who wanted to continue to attack. It seems that your identity is not simple, Sodric, Vlad 3 said. Being able to withstand the joint attack of 3 servants was not something a French general should have. I just used the identity of Sodric to summon Saber, but the martial arts of other identities have been deeply engraved in my mind. Wuming swung his sword and put the meteor silver into the golden ripples of Dragonist. It seems that I can't take you down today, not someone from Sodric. Vlad 3 didn't seem to be depressed. You are wrong. I am Sodric, there is no doubt about that. It's just that I have another identity. Wuming smiled. Then, he looked at the boundless sky. You have to be careful. You have to know that the Red Sides fortress has the Hanging Garden of kamikaze magic. Hanging Garden. Not good. Vlad 3 also realized something. At this moment, a gigantic sky fortress appeared in the boundless sky above Mylnia Citadel. It was the Hanging Garden with the ability to block detection. The originally flat ground was broken by the powerful suction of the Hanging Garden, and the Great Holy Grail, which was located in the center of the Hanging Garden, also broke out of the ground. What? One of the Black Side Masters exclaimed in surprise. After all, it was too hard to believe that the Red Side's purpose was to directly take away the Great Holy Grail. Well then, you guys go ahead. I'll take my leave first. With that, Wuming's spiritual form disappeared. The black servants present, Black Lancer Vlad 3, Black Archer Sharon, Black Rider Astolfo, and Black Berserker Frankenstein all followed the boulder and entered the Hanging Garden. At that moment, Jean, who was resisting the explosion of the Red Berserker Spartacus, met Wuming, who came out of Mylnia Fortress. Sodric! Jean roared. What? What's wrong, Jihan? Wuming was shocked. Didn't I tell you not to act on your own? You have now seriously damaged the Holy Grail war between the Black and Red factions. Jean d'Arc, who was Rule, said. Although I don't have your command incantation, the command incantation that belongs to the Red Saber can be used on you, so you'd better stay put. Jean looked at Wuming until Wuming surrendered. Yes, I know, my saintess, Wuming said helplessly. Besides, I was just trying to protect Siegfried. After all, this is the agreement I made with Siegfried, Wuming said with an embarrassed smile. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. You're just looking for fun for yourself and protecting Mr. Sieg, Jean said. Really, you used to be like this too. You always acted on your own. If you didn't act on your own, you wouldn't have been accused of the mystic dragon, Jean said sadly. This was what was recorded in Wuming's history. The adventurous General Sodric was attracted to the Alps by the legend and was ambushed by the British Army. In order to win the war between Britain and France, the British Army found a way to release the mystic dragon, who used to be a member of the Knights of the Round Table. With the help of Sodric's wisdom, Sodric barely defeated the mystic dragon. Jean d'Arc also dared to lead her army. Otherwise, the exhausted Sodric would have been captured by the British Army. Wuming, on the other hand, smiled helplessly. Really, that's because it's convenient for me to use my noble phantasm. The suppression power was given to me in the history. Alright, you stay here for now. I'm going to the Sky Garden to question the Red Faction Master. If I find out that you're still running around, I'll definitely use my command incantation. After that, Jean d'Arc activated the pendant and flew into the air, heading toward the Sky Garden. Wuming, on the other hand, smiled helplessly and waved his hand. It's good that you stay here. I still have to help Sieg save those androids. Hey! Villo! Wuming turned his head and saw Jiali and Mordred rushing over in a car that was almost scrapped. As soon as the car stopped, Mordred directly kicked the door and walked out. You're really good. You actually broke into the enemy's base camp alone. Mordred smiled as if she was meeting a good friend. She held Wu Ming's neck and laughed. This made Jiali confused. After all, Mordred and Wu Ming did not get along very well before. They were not friendly. Wu Ming, on the other hand, saw through Jiali's thoughts and said, "In the Knights of the Round Table, Mordred is not liked by the other knights. Only I am willing to talk to Mordred. Of course, our relationship is good. Mordred hates me because of the bloodline problem." "What did you say?" "You bastard, who has a good relationship with you?" Mordred, like a tsundere, fiercely punched Wu Ming. "Bloodline." Wu Ming pressed down on Mordred's fist and continued to speak to Jiali. "Didn't you notice that Mordred's eyes turn red when she fights? That's because a little of my bloodline is mixed in, causing her eyes to turn red when she fights." Ignoring the noisy Mordred, Jiali asked, "Speaking of which, didn't you not participate in the war between the two sides? Why did you run to the black side's base camp to make a ruckus?" Wu Ming smiled awkwardly. Then, Wu Ming told Jiali about his experience after he and Jiali separated. "So that's how it is," Jiali said. "It's all because of you. Master, we didn't make it in time for this war, damn it." Mordred roared at Jiali. Jiali waved his hand helplessly and ignored Mordred. "So, what are you going to do now? The Saintess asked you not to run around anymore, otherwise, she will use the command seal." Jiali asked. "Now, the black side should only have one servant, Caster. I decided to help Sieg rescue those androids first. Then, we will leave first. If the people of the Yugomarinia family see us, there will be trouble." Jiali was about to leave. However, Mordred tugged on the lion Jiali's clothes and said, "What are you saying, Master? Since the other party has entered the Sky Garden, we should also go in." Hey! You can't be serious. That is Assassin's noble phantasm. Is it really okay for us to go in directly? Isn't that good? Let's fight directly. As a king, I will be fine. Mordred laughed. Looking at Mordred, who was spouting nonsense, Wu Ming laughed. "Really, Mordred, you are still so reckless." Yes, you are too reckless. At least, let's find a place to investigate first." "What is there to investigate?" "I hate magicians the most, just like Merlin, that bastard. Anyway, let's leave first." "No. Continue to attack the Sky Garden." Looking at the master and servant who were quarreling together, Wu Ming couldn't help but say, "You guys are really good together." After that, Wu Ming walked toward Marinia's fortress. Chapter 69. In the end, it was decided that Leo and Mordred would follow the suction force and enter the Sky Garden. Wu Ming, on the other hand, came to the basement of the androids that acted as batteries. He began to open the incubators one by one to rescue the androids. After a while, Wu Ming found that someone had come. When he saw the person, Wu Ming was a little surprised. "Sieg, why are you back so soon?" Sieg brought some of the androids that he had previously persuaded to the basement. Sigh. "Mr. Sodric, I saw that the black side servants had all entered the Sky Fortress, so I sneaked in with the scroll you gave me. After I found them, I came with them." Okay, I won't say anything more. Take it." After that, Wu Ming threw a bag to Sieg. It was full of recovery potions. Give each of the rescued androids a bottle. It can temporarily restore their physical abilities. Let them come and rescue the other androids. Okay. Every time an android was rescued, it was equivalent to having more power. Soon, all the androids were liberated. Wu Ming said to Sieg, "So, Sieg, have you really decided to liberate the androids and let them be free?" You, who originally needed orders, will no longer be ordered. What purpose do you have to live for? Sieg replied with a firm look in his eyes. Although what you said is indeed the truth, self-awareness should not be needed for us. I don't know if it is the right thing for us to give up our duties, but even if we can't rest in peace in the future, even if there is despair waiting in front of us, we still want to walk our own path. We don't need salvation, we need freedom of choice. So, please, Mr. Sodrick. Wu Ming smiled and said, "Ah, I will help you." Then he said to Sieg, "How about this, I will go with you to negotiate with the Black Side Master. After all, they can't leave here for the time being." "Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Sodrick." Sieg and the female androids had a simple negotiation and asked her to take the basement with the androids, then followed Wu Ming's footsteps. With that, Wu Ming and Sieg walked out of the basement. "Speaking of which, you are really courageous. Why didn't Castor come to find you again? He didn't enter the Sky Garden." Sigh. Sieg panicked. "Don't worry, I've already heavily injured him. He's either recovering his mana somewhere or has already disappeared." Soon, Wu Ming and Sieg found the masters of the Black Side gathered together. "What? The Red Team's saber. Why are you here?" Wu Ming looked at the surprised expressions of the four masters in front of him and asked. "Isn't the master of Black Lancer and Black Castor here?" Uncle entered the Sky Garden with the servants. "I don't know where Rocher and Castor went." The speaker was a woman in a wheelchair. "If I remember correctly, you're the master of Black Archer." "Yes, thank you for remembering me. My name is Fiori, and I'm the next leader. Don't call me Red Saber. I was summoned by cheating. Just call me Sodrick." "All right, Mr. Sodlek. May I know what your intentions are?" Wu Ming looked at the masters who were ready to use the command spell to summon the servants. "You don't have to be nervous. I said earlier that I don't want to be enemies with you. If it weren't for Avisbrin, I wouldn't have put a noble phantasm in your fortress. What I mean is very simple. What do you want me to do for you to let those androids go?" "What? What do you mean?" Gordon, the master of Sieg, who created those androids, asked. "I want to save those androids, my compatriots," Sieg said. "Are you kidding me?" Astolfo's master, Serenikai, said lightly. It seemed that when she saw Sieg, she went crazy. "Are you kidding me? Who will let those androids go? How can I let you go?" Serenikai said crazily, ignoring Wu Ming's presence. "He's mine. Astolfo is mine, but he was taken away by you scum. How can I let you go?" Serenikai roared at Sieg. "By the command spell, Astolfo, return to my side." As Serenikai's hand moved, the command spell disappeared, and Astolfo, who was originally in the Sky Garden, appeared in the storage room by teleportation. What's going on, Master?" Sigh. Sodrick and Sieg. "Astolfo, I command you to kill that android with 2 command spells." "What?" Astolfo was a little stunned. He had just been summoned, and at this moment, his master ordered him to kill the androids he saved. Looking at Astolfo, who was trembling slightly, Serenikai laughed crazily. "That's right. That's right. I want to watch you kill the people you saved, watch you fall, you can only be mine." "Mine." "Ah-ha-ha-ha-ha." In addition to Wu Ming and Sieg, the 3 people present, Fiol, Collins, and Golder all looked at Serenikai in disbelief. "That's it." As the voice fell, the blade flashed. Serenikai fell to the ground, her head separated from her body. "It's really a servant's misfortune to have a master like you. This just gives me a bargaining chip to negotiate with you." Wu Ming looked at Astolfo, who was kneeling on the ground and was about to disappear because of the death of his master. Wuming then looked at Sieg. Sieg, you now form a servant contract with Astolfo. What? Fiol and the other two were a little surprised that an android could form a contract with a servant. Don't you have a command spell? Then hurry up, this is your bargaining chip to help your companions. Then, Wuming looked at Fiol, Collins, and Golder. You don't have any objections, right? In response to this semi-threatening inquiry, the three could only say, no, please go ahead. Hurry up, Sieg, do you want to see Astolfo disappear? Then, he looked at Fiore, Collins, and Gordon. You guys come out with me, leave some space for Sieg and Astolfo. Yes. Yes. The three replied in panic. Wuming closed the door and waited outside with the three. Excuse me. Mr. Sodrick, who are you? In the face of this question, Wuming did not answer directly. I'm a cheating servant who was summoned together with the red saber. My purpose is to meet the ruler, Jean d'Arc. Because I'm a cheating servant, I was asked by the ruler not to interfere with the Holy Grail War. Because I agreed to Siegfried's request before he died, I will protect him. So I didn't interfere with the Holy Grail War. Sieg is the one who interfered, it has nothing to do with me. Wuming finally said like a rascal. And, I think when ruler comes down from the Sky Garden later, she will gather the remaining servants to suppress the real offenders, so we will probably be comrades later. This made the three people not dare to flatter him. As for the problem of me killing that woman, first of all, you guys attacked the people I wanted to protect. It's good that I didn't kill all of you, and I believe that you guys don't want to make a scene like that, wasting 3 command spells because of a personal grudge. In a way, I've helped you. The 3 people expressed that they had never seen such a shameless person. Chapter 70. After a while, the contract between Sieg and Astolfo was completed. Under the push of Wuming, Sieg said that as the master of Black Rider, he was willing to be used by the black side, but the premise was that the androids could no longer be used as mana supply, and the androids could no longer live in the castle. However, Fiore said that she was only the next patriarch, and the current patriarch, Danik, was still in the Sky Garden, so she couldn't promise Sieg, but she could temporarily settle the androids before Danik returned. Sieg agreed after discussing with the androids. And Wuming provided the black side's mana supply. Wuming took out a tool that could provide mana supply and gave it to Fiore, letting her connect the mana supply of each servant. Then, Wuming received a message from Leo. Wuming had told Leo before that if there was any change in the Sky Garden, she should immediately let Mordred pass it to Wuming through Leo. Soon, Wuming summoned the people of the Eugomarinia family, including Sieg and Astolfo. I received a message from my master. Vlad III had been turned into a vampire and was killed by a red master. His master, Danica, had fused with the vampire and died together. Indeed, Archer also informed me that Uncle Danik and Lancer are dead, Fiore said. He is now retreating with Berserker, Ruler, and Red Saber. It is estimated that they will reach Myrenia soon. As soon as she finished, the androids ran over to report that the black side had returned. In the conference room provided by Fiore, Joan of Arc, Wuming, Sieg, Astolfo, Fiore, Sharon, Cowles, and Gold gathered here, even Leo and Mordred were there. Except for Frankenstein, who belonged to Berserker, who did not participate, only Castor Avisbrin and his Master Rock were missing. Joan of Arc began her analysis of Shiro Amakusa and the stakes of his wish. After knowing that the consequences would be severe, Eugomariania's side already had the intention of joining forces to stop Shiro Amakusa. After a series of non-critical analysis, Joan of Arc requested for everyone to work together. After all, this Holy Grail war was already in complete chaos. Fiore agreed to Joan of Arc's request on behalf of House Eugomariania. Because of the androids, Zieg and Astolfo, as allies of Hugo Marinia, also agreed to Joan of Arc's request. Their request to give the androids freedom was also approved by Fiore, who was now the acting patriarch. As for Wu Ming, he was originally a violator, so naturally, he had no right to speak. In addition, Wu Ming had a relationship with Joan of Arc, so he also agreed to Joan of Arc's request. After knowing Joan of Arc's skill, divine judgment, Liu Jie and Mordred also agreed to Joan of Arc's request with a command seal. Although they would choose to cooperate even if there was no command seal, after all, if the analysis was true, then they must defeat the red side. Originally, Mordred wanted 2 command seals, but Joan of Arc refused because each servant only had 2 command seals, and Wu Ming did not have a command seal, so he could only use Mordred's command seal. However, Joan of Arc never thought of using command seal to command Wu Ming. It was just an excuse to refuse Mordred's request. It could be seen that the village girl was quite smart. At this point, the Holy Grail War has been completely destroyed. Now the black side's purpose was to defeat the red side servants and masters and maintain the Holy Grail War. After the meeting was dismissed, everyone went to rest, but Wu Ming was chatting with Joan of Arc. In fact, Joan of Arc was telling Wu Ming about what happened in the Sky Garden. "So that's how it is, Dracula," Wu Ming said thoughtfully. "Yes, but what surprised me most was the master of all the red side servants, Shiro Amakusa." Joan of Arc was wearing a student's uniform, sitting on a chair. "The Sage of the Far East. I didn't expect him to get a body and live for 60 years. His mental power is strong enough. After all, planning for 60 years for a goal was not something an ordinary person could do. Only a hero who becomes a heroic spirit can do that," Wu Ming said slowly. Now that he thought about it, he was almost 60 years old. He couldn't remember, after all, age was meaningless for a race like the Dragon of Origin that was almost immortal. There must be something wrong with that man's wish. "I think so. This must be the purpose of my summoning," Joan of Arc said. "I see. I will do my best to help you. Please advise me, Joan of Arc." It was the first time he called Joan of Arc by her nickname, which made Joan of Arc feel a little awkward, but Joan of Arc responded. "Okay, I'll leave it to you, Sodlek." At that moment, the outside of Mylnia Citadel was shaking as if there was an earthquake. Wu Ming and Joan of Arc looked at each other and quickly ran out. In the courtyard, several servants and masters gathered together. "What happened? What the hell is going on?" Gold, who was wearing pajamas, hurriedly shouted. Soon, everyone saw the culprit that caused the earthquake. There was nothing he could do about it. After all, there was a gigantic magic puppet over 10 meters tall walking towards him. The earth was trembling because of it. "That's Black Castor's noble phantasm." Joan of Arc was the first to call out the puppet's real name. "Crowned Light of Wisdom, Golem Kethermalchit, I'll go first, Jihan." Wu Ming condensed his armor, took out Meteor Silver, and shouted at Mordred, "Come with me, Mordred." Of course. Mordred's face was full of arrogance. She condensed her armor and sword and rushed forward with Wu Ming. Seeing the two of them rushing up, Lion Jia asked, "So where is Black Castor? Why did he attack his own faction?" Joan of Arc said, "In my perception, Black Castor has already left. This noble phantasm seems to have the property that it won't disappear even if the servant leaves." Fiore, who was standing at the side, said sadly, "It seems that Rocher has been used as a furnace by Castor. In fact, after Avisprin was almost killed by Wu Ming, he went to Crowned Light of Wisdom, Golem Kethermalchit, with his master Rocher. Because Avisprin knew that his master had no command seal, and because his magical power was almost exhausted, even if he could barely keep his body from disappearing, it would be impossible for him to complete his noble phantasm in the future. Therefore, he tricked Rocher to come here as a condition for his noble phantasm's release. He turned Rocher into a furnace and sacrificed Rocher to release his noble phantasm. And he himself knew that he was also at death's door, so he gave up himself and turned into magical power to integrate into Crown Light of Wisdom, Golem Kethermalchit. After all, his wish was to complete his noble phantasm. Now that his wish has been fulfilled, there was no need for him to exist. Wuming and Mordred kept attacking Crown Light of Wisdom, Golem Kethermalchit, but it didn't have much effect at all. Therefore, all the damage was eliminated. That's the effect of Crown Light of Wisdom, Golem Kethermalchit, recreating the Garden of Eden, and there is no damage in the Garden of Eden. Joan of Arc shouted. You must make its feet leave the ground, and then crush its head and heart. Understood. Wuming shouted. Chapter 71. After knowing its weakness, Wuming no longer fought with the Crown Light of Wisdom, Gold Kethermalchit. Wuming released a large amount of magical power and accelerated, avoiding the Crown Light of Wisdom's attack. He then slid under the Crown Light of Wisdom and held the sword with both hands. Then he used the sword as a plank and hit the lower part of the Crown, Gold Kethermalchit. That hit made the men present shudder. Don't get me wrong, Wuming wanted to hit it into the air. With the release of magical power, a large amount of magical power rushed out of Wuming's body like starlight. The Light of Wisdom, Gold Kethermalchit, was sent flying into the air by Meteor Silver, and its huge body was still struggling. Then, Wuming held the sword with both hands on his waist, and the starlight in the sky flowed rapidly, and the Meteor Silver began to gather a large amount of starlight. Silver. With the release of Noble Phantasm, Wuming swung the Meteor Silver, which gathered a large amount of starlight, upward. The starlight rushed toward the sky like a rushing river until it completely covered the Crown Light of Wisdom. The light beam formed by the starlight continued to fly upward until it reached a place where people couldn't see it. After a while, the light beam became thinner and thinner until it disappeared. The 10-meter-tall Crown of Wisdom Golem Kethermalchit was completely turned into ashes, not even a speck was left. Only a little bit of starlight that had not completely dissipated was left. Wait for me, the Silver Knight stood in place with his sword. Masters such as Fiore, Collins, and Gold were all dumbfounded. Sieg was fine, after all, he was just born not long ago, and he didn't know how powerful Noble Phantasm was. The heroic spirits were still fine, but they were also a little shocked. How is this possible? How could the French General Sodelec have such a powerful noble artifact? Gold said in a trembling voice. Indeed, Sodelec only fought against ordinary people, and he didn't do anything like that. He shouldn't have such a powerful relic. Collins gulped and pushed his glasses up. Hey, Ryder, are there only a few servants with such a powerful relic? This was the question Sieg asked Astolfo. Ha! Are you an idiot, master? Such a powerful relic is already considered a first-class servant, Astolfo said. Also, if I'm not mistaken, Sodelec's noble phantasm hasn't been fully unleashed. In other words, it hasn't been fully unleashed yet, said Sharon, the black archer who was assisting on the roof earlier. On the other hand, Mordred directly rushed over to Wuming's neck and laughed loudly. As expected of Avillo, what a beautiful attack. Wuming touched the armor, took back the Meteor Silver, and looked at Mordred helplessly. I told you to train with me, but you didn't listen. You even started a rebellion when I wasn't around. I really don't know what you were thinking. You bastard, shut up. What's there to show off? Even so, didn't I still end King Arthur? Mordred looked at Wuming with a fierce expression. Even if the two of them fought on the spot, no one would doubt it. I've been curious since the beginning. Red Saber has always called Mr. Sodelec Avillo. Could it be that Mr. Sodelec isn't actually Sodelec, but a knight of the Round Table Villo? Fiol, who was sitting in a wheelchair, asked. As soon as she asked, the scene became silent. There was no doubt that this was a secret for the heroic spirits. In fact, there's nothing to hide. If you still don't want to sleep, then I'll tell you my story. Because of the attack of the crown, Light of Wisdom, Gold Cathermalchit, Myrinia's fortress was also damaged, so everyone didn't plan to sleep, they had to clean up the damage first. Under the command of Cowls, the androids began to move the stones and clean up the damaged places. The servants also came to help, and Cowls, Gold, and others also joined in. Only Fiol, who had difficulty moving, sat in a wheelchair and listened to Wooming's story. First of all, I'm Sodlek, but I'm Villo, a knight of the Round Table. Wooming raised a larger stone, and the servants were responsible for cleaning up the stones that the androids couldn't clean up. Several people were surprised when they heard that. Is the story of Sodlek fighting the mystic dragon in the Alps true? Fiol asked. What she meant was the rumor that Sodlek let Villo, a knight of the Round Table's incarnation, take over his body was true. No, it's half true. I did fight the mystic dragon, but that was when I was Sodlek. Wooming crushed the boulder. Then he asked, do you know the legend of Villo, a knight of the Round Table? Yes, Villo was cursed by the black magician in order to save King Arthur's sister, Morgan Le Fay. His body turned into a dragon, and his mind was devoured. He was sealed by King Arthur, Merlin, and others. Some people also commented that Villo's incarnation was the beginning of the end of Arthur's dynasty. Cowles said. Save that be *tch. She was the one who forced Varen to reveal his true form, the mystic dragon, and then sealed Varen in the scroll. That despicable be *tch. Mordred said as she punched out with all her might, shattering a boulder. The boulder splashed and hit Leo Gielli, causing Leo Gielli to complain, hey, hey. Be careful. Then, what does it mean to turn into a dragon? Is Villo a dragon? Leo Gielli asked. That's right. I'm a dragon, a purebred dragon, Wooming said calmly, as if he was talking about what he had eaten yesterday. Sigh. A few different voices cried out. Is this possible? That's a dragon. A dragon that will never be seen again in the Kannagi era. Wooming ignored their ruckus and continued to speak. Ah, that's right. Dragons didn't appear in King Arthur's era. Dragons weren't suitable for that era, so I turned into a human. After that, Morgan Le Fay used an unknown poison to devour my mind, and I turned back into my original form. That era couldn't bear my existence, so I was forced out of that era. This is too shocking. Gold said blankly. He didn't know that the boulder in his hand had left his palm and was smashing toward his feet. Ah! My feet! It hurts. It hurts. Ah! Gould rolled on the ground with his arms around his legs in a sorry state. Everyone laughed and continued to listen to Wooming tell his story. Chapter 72. Wooming continued. After I was expelled from that era, I experienced a lot of things that this world doesn't know and doesn't record. Finally, I came to the origin. At this point, everyone stopped what they were doing. Even Golder, who was holding his feet and crying in pain, stopped talking and looked at Wooming quietly. To be honest, what's so good about the origin? It's all chaos. For humans, there's no benefit in it other than being assimilated by the origin, Wooming said contemptuously. The magicians present all knew that Wooming was mocking those magicians whose ultimate goal in life was to trace the origin. However, Patriarch Darnik of the Yugomarinia family also seemed to want to trace the origin, so they, who carried the name of the Yugomarinia family, belonged to this kind of people. Fiol, Collins, and Golder were all silent. Were they disappointed because the origin that the magicians had been searching for was easily found by the other party, or were they sad because they were mocked by the other party? Wuming didn't know the reason for their silence, but Wuming knew that the 3 Eugomarinia magicians present were not evil people. From Wuming's point of view, the 3 Eugomarinia magicians present were not evil people. From Wuming's point of view, Fiol and Collins were not suitable to be magicians. This was not referring to their aptitude, but their personality, especially Fiol, who was like a little sister next door. Collins was fine. He could make up his mind to kill people, but he would not violate the morals in his heart. There was also Golder, the middle-aged fatty. He was proud, arrogant, and narrow-minded. Moreover, Golder had always disliked the androids, but Wuming could see that he had a deep impact on the androids that Ziegfeld had saved. Now, although he still spoke ill of the androids, he was much better than before in terms of details and attitude. In short, he treated the androids as humans. Then, I lived in the origin. What? I know this may be unbelievable to you, but I really lived in the origin. My body is somewhat special. It can absorb the power of the origin to accelerate its growth. Then, Wuming looked at Jean. Then, with the help of the suppression, I subconsciously reincarnated into a village in France. My physical body was still sleeping in my roots. After that, it's the story of Sodric. In order to be able to use the noble artifact that I had when I was a Villo, the suppressive force added the story of how I met the demonic dragon that the Villo transformed into. I see. That explains why you can use Villo the Knight's noble artifact so freely, Fiore said. After Wuming finished speaking, the place was pretty much cleaned up. Then, Wuming said, "All right, everyone, hurry up and go rest. We need to conserve energy for the next few days and prepare to attack the space garden." Just like that, everyone spent an incredible night. It could be said that because of Wuming's words, several people couldn't fall asleep. The next day, in the conference room. "So, what happened again? Why did you call me up so early in the morning?" Wuming said as he sat in his seat. Looking at a few yawning people who hadn't fallen asleep, Wuming looked at Jean again. He noticed that Jean had dark circles under her eyes. Was the impact of those words on Jean too much? Wuming thought. It's like this. Fiore sat at the head of the table and said, "Now, there is a very urgent matter." After that, she took out a newspaper and placed it in front of everyone. "Jack the Ripper." Jean said. "Is it Black Assassin?" Wuming asked. "Yes. Recently, more and more people have been sacrificed in the serial murder cases. Just last night, 8 people were killed. Now, dozens of people have been killed, including magician," Collins said with a serious face. "We can't get in touch with our blood relatives in Tulifis, and they're probably already, needless to say, they must have also been killed by Black Assassin Jack the Ripper. Although this is our Eugitomarinia's matter, now we are unable to solve this matter, so we want to entrust the ruler to help us solve this matter. Black Assassin's practice has exceeded the rules of the Holy Grail War. As the ruler of this Holy Grail War, I have the obligation to stop Black Assassin. Please rest assured that I will help you." Jean looked at Fiore seriously. Fiore couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and said, "Great, I thought this would conflict with your identity as the ruler." "How can that be? Even if I'm not the ruler, I will still help you. After all, Black Assassin's practice is unacceptable to me." As a heroic spirit, he wantonly attacked ordinary humans and magicians. There is no doubt that Black Assassin has fallen into evil. Then Jean looked at Wuming and said with a smile. "And even without me, Sodric will definitely not allow Black Assassin to exist." Wuming, who was resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes and looked at Jean. "Of course, now I'm not only the French General Sodric, but also a knight of the Round Table Villo. Such evil people must be punished. Really, I didn't want to care. After all, Sodric was the one who was righteous, not Wu Ming. The suppressive force created a fake history, and arranged Wu Ming's identity as a young man with a sense of justice. Sodric sacrificed himself for his country. Although Wu Ming's sense of justice wasn't low either, he wasn't as righteous as Joan of Arc. However, Black Assassin Jack the Ripper is currently in Tolofis. Who knows, he might have infiltrated the castle, which would undoubtedly interfere with our plans. Yep, let's deal with Black Assassin Jack the Ripper first. That was why Wu Ming was said to be at Sundra. Then, do we have any information about Black Assassin now? Astolfo asked. Yes, Master and I have fought with Black Assassin before. Just as Sharon was about to tell them about Black Assassin Jack the Ripper, he was suddenly shocked. What's wrong, Archer? Fiore asked. Master, do you still remember the information about Black Assassin? Sharon asked. I sigh. How is that possible? I clearly remember. Fiore was also shocked. It seems that Black Assassin has a special ability to make people forget about him. As expected of the Jack the Ripper who fooled Scotland Yard, Wu Ming said. Wu Ming guessed that Black Assassin might have evolved into a noble phantasm because his true identity had not been discovered. Between August 7 and November 9, 1888, Jack the Ripper killed 5 prostitutes in an extremely cruel way near Whitechapel in the East End of London. Jack the Ripper wrote many letters to Scotland Yard, the local police station, to provoke them, but he was never caught. It was not even clear whether Jack the Ripper was a man or a woman. Until now, no one had figured out who Jack the Ripper was. Wait, so we only know that Black Assassin's real name is Jack the Ripper, and we don't know anything else? Although I don't want to admit it, it is the truth. Hey 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 hey. Chapter 73. In the end, everyone decided to first check the situation of the missing people of the Yugomarinia family in Tolofis. Marinia Citadel, Corridor. Because Cowles wanted to check in person and needed to bring some tools, he left first accompanied by Sharon. Sieg and Astolfo seemed to have gone to find the androids, and Fiore became the patriarch because of Darnick's death, so she still had work to do. So now only Wu Ming and Jean were left. Wu Ming requested to set up some magic traps around Marinia Citadel to guard against Black Assassin Jack the Ripper. At this moment, the two were on their way out of Marinia Citadel. I really miss those relaxed days, Wu Ming said slowly with a nostalgic expression on his face. Joan of Arc was also deeply moved. To be honest, you've never been like a child since you were young. No matter what you do it well. You're calm and strict. Back then, there were many girls who fancied you. Jean covered her mouth and giggled. Wu Ming looked at Jean with a relaxed expression. I'm sorry, Jean, I didn't tell you about my past. How could that be? Jean shook her head. Because I know, whether it is Villo or Sodlek, they are all you, aren't they? So I will accept them all. Then, Jean showed a big smile to Wu Ming. After seeing this smile, Wu Ming also relaxed. Really, and you still say you are not a saintess? Your ability to heal people's hearts is really strong. But Jean was unhappy when she heard this and began to preach to Wu Ming with a straight face. Really, Sodlek, I always said that I am not a saintess, and you still dare to tease me. Wu Ming quickly waved his hand and said, sorry. Then Wu Ming looked at Jean seriously. But for you to say such things, maybe you really are a saintess sent to the human world. Jean had a helpless look on her face. Hey Jean, do you remember our companion? Wu Ming's question silenced Jean. Then, she slowly said, how could I forget? They are our companions who fought off the invaders with us. Ah, that's right. This is a memory that can never be forgotten. Especially after you were captured, Gil and the others asked Charles VII, who had ascended the throne with your help, to send troops to arrest you. They knelt for 3 days and 3 nights. Is that so? I'm really sinful. Jean's face was slightly sad. Clearly, this holy maiden was unwilling to see her companions treat her in such a manner. Charles VII also wanted to save you back then, but he couldn't do it in the current situation. Gil and the others couldn't do anything either. Wuming looked at Jean. So, I'm here. The atmosphere gradually became sorrowful. We were born together in a village called Domremy. We left the village together and fought together for 2 years. In the end, we were burned to death together. If there's anything I regret, it's that I didn't get to see the smiles of the French people defeating the invaders. But I don't regret it, Cédric. Jean looked at Wuming. I have sinned deeply, and I have always felt lucky to be able to return to the arms of the Lord in the end. Then Jean looked ahead and continued to speak. But I think it is a happy thing to die with you, although I don't want you to be burned to death. Then, after seeing the gate of Myrenia, Jean quickened her pace and walked out of the castle. Wuming gradually stopped and looked at the back of the holy maiden. As expected of someone who looks just like Liao. With that, he strode forward again. Well, I'm just not satisfied with the lack of a Hogue. If Jean heard this, she would probably roll her eyes again. She might also ask who Liao was. Outside Myrenia City, Wuming took out a large number of scrolls from the golden ripple, and they piled up in front of Wuming's chest. Then Wuming said to Jean, "These are the magic scrolls I accidentally obtained when I left Britain to travel. Jean, you and I will take half of these scrolls, and insert them around Myrenia City in a circle." Well, but it's surprising that my true name decipher didn't activate. I think these scrolls have a Nordic style, but they don't look like it. Jean said while holding a long roll of scrolls. Well, maybe it's because this is not the magic of this world. After all, this is what I got in another world. Wuming said. Hey! Another world. Then you have to deal with these magic of another world properly. If you are accidentally discovered by the people of this world, those magicians will definitely go crazy again. Jean said with a smile. Yes, these scrolls will disappear after they are activated, and the magic will automatically dissipate when the time limit is reached. Don't worry. Wuming explained. Then let's get started. After that, Wuming and Jean began to arrange the scrolls. To ensure the powerful effect of the magic, Wuming told Jean to arrange the scrolls in a certain pattern with a specific technique. Although Jean was a ruler, she was still a village girl, so it was a bit difficult for her to solve some profound problems. Wuming could only smile helplessly and let Jean help him arrange the scrolls. Soon, the two completed the arrangement of the scrolls. Wuming smiled and said to Jean, "Jean, I remember you relied on a high school student, so do you know how to do math questions?" "I don't understand." Ha ha ha. Jean laughed, but the laughter was weak and awkward. Wuming shook his head. "It's better for you to be a village girl. Leave the saintess to others." Wuming knocked Jean's head. Then, Wuming didn't care about Jean, who was holding her head and acting cute, but began to activate the scrolls. It is said that the magic spells in Yggdrasil are some similar to English words. As long as you reply in English, you can basically recite the spell. As a spell similar to English words blurted out from Wuming's mouth, the scrolls inserted into the ground began to be burned by blue flames and instantly turned to ashes. Jean couldn't help but look around. As the scrolls disappeared one by one, the surrounding atmosphere and air seemed to be buried by something and became extremely sticky. The amount of magic in the atmosphere gradually increased, and when it reached the density of the atmosphere that modern people couldn't stand, Wuming stopped. Then Wuming opened another golden scroll and dripped a drop of his blood on it. The scroll seemed to be activated, and it was instantly burned to ashes by blue flames. At this time, the amount of magic in the air returned to normal. Really, because of the influence of my class, I can't use high-level magic at all. The scroll just now was forcibly released with my own blood. Wuming said somewhat unhappily. Those scrolls were some magic scrolls between level 40 and 60, which dealt with Wuming's skills. Magic C studied magic a little, but didn't pay much attention to magic. Because of Magic Dragon, the level was slightly increased. If it weren't for Magic Dragon, Wuming could only use level 20 to 40 magic. According to Wuming's inference, Yggdrasil's magic and the corresponding level of the moon world corresponded like this. Level 0 to 20 was E, level 20 to 40 was D, level 40 to 60 was C, level 60 to 80 was B, level 80 to 100 was A, and super magic was EX. The golden scroll just now was a level 80 item. Okay, now it's almost done. At this time, the rest of the people were almost ready. Chapter 74. After everyone was ready, Wuming, Joan of Arc, Sharon, and Collins went to Tulipha's missing relatives to investigate. Fiore, Sieg, and Astolfo stayed in Myrenia Citadel. Because the missing people were distributed in different places, it took a long time to investigate the last missing person. In the basement of a room. Including this place, 8 people have been investigated. This is the last place to investigate. Colin squatted on the ground and was examining the body. Looking at the corpse tied to the chair with its eyes rolled back and several scalpels stabbed into its body, everyone fell silent. Collins pulled out the scalpels one by one, and there was no more blood to flow from the wound. The results of the investigation in 8 places have a commonality. Everyone's heart was dug out. Speaking of this, everyone present frowned. The heart is the essence of magic power. It's not surprising for Black Assassin to have it dug out. Wuming stood aside with his hands on his chest, and then said, maybe Black Assassin's master is an ordinary person, not a magician. This reminded everyone. Then, digging out a magician's heart to replenish magic power makes sense, Sharon said. In addition to digging out the heart, the body looked like it was interrogated before death, and the torture method was extremely cruel, Collins said. The strange thing is that some of the bodies have traces of torture, and some of the bodies have no traces of torture. That's what's strange. Sharon continued what Collins was about to say. Is it possible that Black Assassin needs people's fear, so they tortured these people? Joan of Arc asked. Impossible. This can't explain why some of the bodies have no traces of torture, and it's not that there wasn't enough time. We were all busy with the war between the Black and Red before, and we didn't have time to care about Black Assassin. Wuming shook his head and said with a frown. I thought it was a magic ritual, but it doesn't look like it, Sharon also said. Cowles stood up and walked back. In that case, I'd better implement remnant memory. Jean did not understand these magic tricks and asked, what is that? It's a kind of magic that can obtain information about them before they die, although it's a little dangerous. Collins took a chair and said, but now we can only abandon the rook to save the king. Wait. Wuming seemed to have sensed something and quickly said. After that, he rushed out in an instant, leaving only one sentence. The magic trap I left in Myrenia has been triggered. The opponent is a servant. What? Ka Rong immediately ran over as well. Berserker. Cowles shouted to Sharon. Ah, 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 cried Frankenstein, and ran out. The people being interrogated are all people who have the password to open the mechanism in Myrenia Citadel. So that's how it is. Black Assassin wants to attack Myrenia Citadel, Collins analyzed. After listening, Jean hurriedly ran out. Only Cowles followed him out unhurriedly. After all, no matter how fast he was, he could not reach the speed of a servant. Not to mention, he needed to calm down. Cowles picked up his phone at this time and wanted to call his sister, but at this time, the phone showed that there was no signal. "Sister, please don't let anything happen to you." Cowles could only pray like this. At this moment, Hugo Marinia family, Marinia Citadel. Around the edge of the citadel, magic formed a protective barrier, protecting the entire citadel in a hemispherical shape. The outside of the protective barrier was filled with thick fog, including the roof. The cyborgs who were originally left outside Marinia Citadel also withdrew. In the hall at the entrance, Gold, Sieg, and Astolfo were checking these cyborgs. Some of the cyborgs were outside the protective barrier and inhaled slight fog acid. Fortunately, they were treated in time, and there were no casualties for the time being. Gold asked at this time. "Where is Fiore now? Is there a guard around her?" A cyborgs on the side replied. "The Patriarch is now in the former Patriarch's study. There is no guard around her at the moment." As soon as he heard that, Sieg immediately turned around. "Hurry, Ryder, the enemy may be a servant." Oh. Understood. After saying that, the two quickly ran toward the study. Gold was left behind with a confused look. At this moment, the protective barrier outside seemed to have reached its limit and broke with a bang. The thick fog spread to Marinia Citadel at a speed visible to the naked eye. Damn it! Gold quickly took out a golden sandalwood-like box, put it at the door, opened the lid, and a purple smoke came out. This purple smoke seemed to have the effect of blocking the thick fog, and the thick fog did not come in through the gap of the main door. However, other places in Marinia Citadel were invaded by the thick fog. Slowly, the entire corridor where Fiore was located was filled with thick fog. Fiore, who was still busy working in the study, also found something wrong at this moment. She quickly opened the door and looked at the corridor. Looking at the corridor covered with thick fog, Fiore took out a magic handkerchief, covered her nose and mouth with one hand, and pushed the wheelchair with the other hand, walking toward the room where her magic dress was stored. After all, Fiore's legs were paralyzed because of the deterioration of the magic circuit. She said that she had obtained extraordinary magic skills, but she could not move freely. Usually, she relied on the magic dress she developed to move. Link Enhanced Magic Dress was the name of Fiore's self-designed magic dress. It was a prop specially designed to replace the immobile feet. However, even a third-rate magician would become a first-rate magician if he were to put on this set of clothes. The shape was similar to a backpack, and there were 4 artificial hands on the back. It was forged with a special alloy that was easier to circulate magic. Each artificial hand had an animal spirit attached to it, and it could move according to Fiore's will. It could also move automatically according to the situation to protect Fiore as the owner. When Fiore finally walked to the door of the room where the magic dress was stored, Fiore caught a glimpse of a strange little girl standing behind her with a knife. But there was no doubt that this cute little girl with white hair was the serial killer, Black Assassin Jack the Ripper. Maybe Fiore was a little panicked. After opening the door, her body tilted and the wheelchair fell to the ground. Fiore hurriedly climbed in and then closed the door with a spell. Just as Fiore heaved a sigh of relief, the door was opened again. "I'm so sorry, sister. I know the spell of this door." The innocent child's gentle words made Fiore's whole body cold, and her pupils shrank. There was no doubt that this was the voice of hell. Chapter 75. Fiore hurriedly reached for the box on the table, but how could Jack let her get it? Jack jumped lightly and stood on the table. He stepped on the box and picked it up. This must be something very important to Big Sister. "I can't let you get it." It was still that sweet voice, but Fiore still couldn't hear the sweetness. Is that so? Then I'll use this first. Fiole suddenly raised her hand, which had been equipped with a magic suit at some point in time. She pointed at the two mechanical arms that were connected to the back of a chair by the wall. Following Fiole's command, the mechanical arms shot out magic bullets. Jack jumped back and used the box in his hand to block the attack. Then, Fiore made a prompt decision. She equipped the mechanical arms and jumped out of the window. Pang! The window was broken. Fiore relied on the mechanical arms and barely reached the ground. Just as she stabilized her body, she saw a sword attack. Caw! One of the mechanical arms was broken. It was cut off by Black Assassin Jack the Ripper, who had caught up with Fiore with agility. Big sister, because of the magic trap outside, I wasted a lot of time. Assassin took the dagger that was still dripping blood and walked in front of Fiore, who was paralyzed on the ground. Be obedient and let me kill you, big sister. At this moment, a meteor-like light arrow shot toward Jack. Jack nimbly jumped back and dodged the light arrow. The light arrow pierced the place where Jack was originally standing and buried deep into the ground. The light scattered and the light arrow revealed its original shape. It was a shining knight's sword that shone like a fashion trend. Oh, a weapon I've never seen before. Is it a servant? Jack said to himself. At the same time, he looked in the direction of the light arrow in the fog. Wu Ming, who was dressed casually, walked over unhurriedly. His hand reached into the golden ripples and took out a bottle of recovery potion. He handed it to Fiore, who was still in the fog. This is a recovery potion. Drink it first. Oh. Okay, thank you. Fiore was a little confused, but she still followed Wu Ming's instructions and drank the red potion. Wu Ming then pulled out the meteor silver that he had bought from the ground. Black Assassin Jack the Ripper. Am I right? Wu Ming looked at the young Jack. That's right, I'm Jack. So, big brother, do you want to be killed by me? Jack asked innocently. I'm sorry, but I'm here to crusade against you. After saying that, Wu Ming pressed the tip of the meteor silver sword to the ground and instantly released all of his magic power. The release of mana led to the movement of the air. At this moment, the mana produced by Wu Ming's body instantly blew away the thick fog that covered the surroundings. What? Jack cried out in surprise. Although the fog was also a type of fog, it was formed by Jack's noble phantasm. He did not expect it to be blown away so easily. Then, Wu Ming instantly put on his armor and rushed forward. Because of Wu Ming's B+ dexterity attribute, his dexterity was comparable to that of a rank A. Even Jack almost could not react to this attack. Bang! The ground was shattered by Wu Ming's knight's sword. Jack narrowly avoided this attack, but before she could stand firm, Wu Ming rushed up with his sword again. Realizing that she could not avoid it, Jack tried to use the dagger in her hand to block the knight's sword that pierced through the air. However, it was useless. Jack's weapon could not defend against Wu Ming's A+ strength. The huge impact sent Jack flying. A wound from her left shoulder to her right abdomen appeared on Jack's body, and blood flowed freely. It hurts, Mom, it hurts, Jack said weakly as she lay on the ground. That's enough, Black Assassin. Wu Ming held the meteor silver and looked at Black Assassin, who was lying on the ground and unable to get up again. However, Jack's figure became illusory. Wu Ming sensed that something was wrong and rushed up. Wu Ming fiercely stabbed his sword into Jack, who was paralyzed on the ground. The meteor silver stabbed into the ground, and Jack, who was originally here, was gone. Command curse. Wu Ming pulled out his sword and said calmly. Then, Wu Ming looked around. The fog that was still gathering after being blown away disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Master. Sharon, who was dressed in ancient Greek clothing, jumped down from the roof. Master. Are you okay? Sharon crouched down and wanted to help Fiore, who was lying on the ground. I'm fine, Archer. It's all thanks to Mr. Sodrick this time. Fiore stood up with Karen's help and thanked Wuming. Thank you very much, Mr. Sodrick. Thank you, Mr. Sodrick. I will repay your kindness to my master. Sharon also thanked Wuming. All right, don't thank me yet. Take Fiore back to rest. I'll go see how the others are doing in the fortress. Then, Sharon brought Fiore back to the room. Wuming saw Sieg and Astolfo, who hurried downstairs. Mr. Sodrick, how are you? Are you okay? Sieg asked worriedly. The fog has dissipated. Did Assassin retreat? Astolfo asked. Wuming put the meteor silver into Golden Ripple and said to the two, Black Assassin Jack the Ripper has been injured by me. When I dealt the fatal blow, his master used a command curse to summon him back. After saying that, Sieg and Astolfo let out a sigh of relief. After all, they knew that the other party was not a powerful servant. By the way, are some of the androids poisoned? Wuming asked. Yes, because some of them accidentally inhaled some of the fog outside the protective shield you set up. But there are no deaths for now. Astolfo said. Then, I'll give you these. After saying that, Wuming opened the Golden Ripple again and took out a large amount of red potions from it. I've given it to you before, and you've used it before. You should know how to use it. Give it to the androids. Sieg and Astolfo held more than 10 bottles of red potions and looked at Wuming, not knowing what to do. That. Mr. Sodrick, you haven't used all the potions you gave us before. You don't have to give them to us anymore. Sieg asked carefully. Yeah, I would have forgotten if you didn't mention it. Astolfo agreed. Wuming just smiled faintly. Save the extra for later. If one day I'm not here, you won't be able to find me even if you want to. With that, he strode towards Jean, who had just rushed over. Looking at Wuming and Jean talking about the attack, Sieg was a little stunned. Astolfo noticed it and asked, What's wrong? You look very confused. Mr. Sodrick, I miss the humans of this era. I almost forgot the fact that he is a heroic spirit. Astolfo thought for a while and said, maybe Sodrick has experienced a lot, so it's easy for him to go deep into various eras. After all, didn't he say that he traveled through the world as a dragon? He must have experienced several different eras. Is that so? Sieg said faintly. Okay, let's go and give these potions to the androids first. Let's go. Wait for me, Ryder. Chapter 76. Evening, Myrenia Citadel, conference room. Everyone sat in their chairs and looked at Wuming, who was analyzing the situation. Black Assassin does have the ability to erase his memory and information. This has been confirmed. Wuming crossed his arms and looked at everyone. But I can feel that Black Assassin has been injured by me. That's what my sword said. And if the other master is an ordinary person, then Black Assassin will definitely attack again because he needs to replenish his magic and recover his body. Collins put the organized files on the table and said, according to our investigation in Japan, at the place where our original master of Black Assassin, Xiangliang Leopard Horse, was killed, there were no traces of the death of the sacrifice used, the 6 guides Lingxia. Furthermore, there were no signs of a transfer charm in Xiangliang Leopard Horse's hands. It can be inferred that during the summoning process, the 6 guides Lingxia was automatically selected as its master by Black Assassin, and after the original master Xiangliang Leopard Horse summoned Black Assassin, it killed Xiangliang Leopard Horse. This is the information of 6 guides Lingxia. In other words, the other party will definitely attack again, right? Astolfo said. Yes, what we need to do now is to wait for Black Assassin to come, Wu Ming said. And Black Assassin triggered my magic trap, leaving a mark on his body. As long as he comes within a certain range of me, I can detect him. But how do we lure Black Assassin out? Fiore asked. After a short rest, because Fiore was not injured, and because she was the current leader of Eugitomerenia, she came to participate in this meeting. I can be the bait, Seek stood up and said. No way. It's too dangerous, Master. You are not a servant at all. You can't defend against an unexpected attack. As Seek's servant, Astolfo immediately retorted. That's right, Seek. Although you want to help everyone, you are too weak as a human. Because of Zijifai's heart, Seek's body was no different from an ordinary person. His magic circuit was also of high quality. His physical fitness was even better than ordinary people. However, Seek was still a human being. He couldn't defend himself from the attacks of the servants in the dark. Even the weakest assassin couldn't do that. It wasn't that Sieg was weak, nor was it discriminating against servants, but Sieg's servant was too powerful. Don't worry, Siegel-kun. Because I'm a servant, I can suppress the presence of a servant. Jean said. And I will be by Jean's side. I have this item that can shield my aura. Nothing will happen. Please rest assured. Wu Ming echoed. Yes, I understand, Sieg said with disappointment. Wu Ming took a deep look at Sieg and then ignored him. Astolfo is responsible for observing from the sky, Sharon is responsible for sniping from Mylenia's fortress, and Sodlek and Jean will be the bait. Colin said. So, it's decided. In order to prevent Black Assassin from attacking ordinary people at night, let's act tonight. Wu Ming stood up and said. Yes. Everyone replied. After the meeting, Wu Ming did not choose to have dinner with Jean. Instead, he went to Sieg and said, let's talk, Sieg. Sigh. Sieg and Astolfo said. After a while, Jean took Astolfo to the restaurant. Wu Ming and Sieg walked on the wall of Mylenia's fortress. Sieg, do you think you are useless? Wu Ming took the lead to speak. Sigh. Mr. Sodlek. I really want to repay you for helping me, but... Sieg said softly. Sieg is willing to give you the heart, not only because he wants to help the people in need, but also because he wants to help the people who ask for help and the people who don't give up. Wu Ming stood on the edge of the wall and looked at the endless grassland in the distance. The grassland, which was originally the battlefield of the Black and Red Army, had been repaired by magic, and there was no trace of damage. Even so, I haven't been of much help to everyone. I've always been asking for help. Everything depends on you, whether it's saving my fellow countrymen, Miss Fiore being attacked by Black Assassin, or acting as bait. If it weren't for you, I would have been in a worse situation. Sieg lowered his head in disappointment. You underestimate yourself, Sieg. Sieg did not speak, but looked at Wu Ming with some doubts. Let's not talk about the fact that you have the best magic circuit as an android. You are now the master of a servant. Wu Ming turned around, looked at Sieg, and continued. The master of a servant is not something that any magician can be, not to mention that you became a master by virtue of your bond with a servant. Although he saved you out of a sense of heroism, he was willing to conclude a contract with you because he remembered your character, and Astolfo saw it in his eyes, and he recognized you as a human. You conveyed your will to me, to the people of Eugitomerenia, otherwise, even I alone can't change their view of you. What Wu Ming said was true. Afterward, Wu Ming told Eugitomerenia and the others about Sieg's thoughts. After listening, they were silent for a long time. Only Golder was a little uneasy, but under Wu Ming's pressure, he didn't say anything. And those androids, I believe they must be grateful to you now for helping them win freedom. Then, Wu Ming turned back. Wuming looked at the vast night sky and said, "Let's take the example in front of us, valiant spirit, a servant. Look at Astolfo, his power is weak among the servants. Some powerful magicians can defeat him, but have you ever seen him discouraged? You know the story of Astolfo, right? His strength in the legend of Charlemagne is too different from the other warriors, but he can still be ranked as one of the 12 warriors of Charlemagne. Do you know why?" Wuming asked. "Sorry, I don't know," Sieg replied. "It was too complicated for an android who was born not long ago. That's because he has the power of the heart." "The power of the heart," Sieg said thoughtfully. "Whether it's the declaration of destruction that can break all magic from the witch, or the lost spear of Argalia, or the magic horse from the evil magician Atlanta, Astolfo relied on the power given by others to get through the difficulties. And Astolfo has a strong heart, a casual and upright character, so he was entrusted by so many people. It was precisely because Astolfo didn't care much about these external forces that he was included in the list of her noble phantoms. The strength of the heart is the real strength. The strength of the heart is the real strength." Sieg muttered this sentence, thinking. "This is what my grandfather who adopted me told me, and I always remember the truth he taught me." Then, as if he had thought of something, Wuming said, "Right, by the way, protecting you wasn't just because of Ziegfeld's request, but also because I have a whole new level of respect for you. Also, since you have accepted Ziegfeld's heart, you must have also obtained his power, but it hasn't been activated yet." Wuming turned around and was ready to leave. After all, if he didn't leave, his stomach wouldn't be able to stand it. "Think about it, don't worry about us tonight, believe in the power of the heart." Chapter 77. After leaving the city wall, Wuming went to the dining hall. Everyone else had already finished eating. Only Jean and Astolfo were still waiting. Jean returned to the dining hall because her body needed to eat. Astolfo didn't need to eat, but he would eat with Sieg. Wuming was the same. Wuming would eat with Jean. "Yo, Sodric," Astolfo greeted him warmly. "How is it?" Jean asked. "He won't understand in a short time. There's still a long way to go." "There's no need to rush," Wuming replied with a smile. "Then hurry up and eat, Sodric." After a while, Sodric and Jean were almost done eating, but Sieg still hadn't arrived. "Why isn't Sieg here yet? Did you make him stupid, Sodric?" Astolfo said while lying on the table in boredom. Coincidentally, Sieg pushed the door open and entered just as Astolfo finished speaking. "Sigh, Mr. Sodric." Sieg was a little embarrassed because he had just been lectured by Wuming. He was like a student who had just met his teacher. "Hurry up. Sieg, hurry up and eat. We still have to move later," Astolfo said. Oh. Okay. Soon, everyone was ready. Fiol and Cowles were overseeing Myrenia Citadel. Frankenstein followed Cowles and Fiol and was responsible for protecting them. Wuming and Jean were the main force in bait. Astolfo was scouting from the sky. Sieg had to deal with special situations with Astolfo, so he rode the eagle with Astolfo. In the end, Sharon would use all-seeing eyes to snipe. As for Leo Gielli and Mordred, they were on different sides. Even with Wuming, Leo Gielli still insisted on moving separately. After discussing how to deal with Shiro Amakusa, the two of them found a graveyard near Tulifas and left Myrenia Citadel. "Let's go, Jean." "Okay." Wuming took out a bottle of potion and drank it. This was a high-level potion from the YGGDRASSAL, World Tree, that had a special invisibility ability. It could block the detection of skills, and only the detection of buildings could see through it. After drinking it, Wuming instantly became transparent. After seeing Wuming disappear, Jean suppressed her magic power and began to act as bait on the street. Because of the man-killer fiends that appeared in Tulifas, no one went out at night. The moonlight shone on the ground, and Joan of Arc, wearing a student uniform, walked on the street step by step. Many residents were already asleep, and there were only a few households with their lights on. Even so, the surroundings were not dark. After all, the moon tonight was much brighter than usual. Wuming hid his figure and followed behind Joan of Arc. Although the plan is good, I'm afraid that the other party won't play by the rules. Wuming thought so. And just in case, Wuming had already set up magic scrolls around Myrenia Citadel, and with Sharon and Frankenstein in the Citadel, there was no way for anything to go wrong. Fortunately, Black Assassin wasn't as sly as Wuming thought. Slowly, the surroundings started to become foggy. Whether it was Sharon, who was using clairvoyance to observe from the top of the citadel, or Astolfo, who was riding an eagle together with Sieg, they were all tense as they observed Joan of Arc's surroundings. At the corner in front of them, a black shadow flashed by, and Joan of Arc saw it. It was as if the shadow was luring Joan of Arc. Seems like the other party isn't a simple person, he knows how to lure the enemy. Wuming said from behind Joan of Arc, then do we need to chase after him? Joan of Arc asked without turning her head. Of course, the other party has already created an opportunity for us, how could we not use it? Don't worry, I'll be right behind you. Yeah. After that, Joan of Arc rushed to the place where the black shadow disappeared. After a series of tossing and turning, the black shadow led Joan of Arc to a residential area that was accessible in all directions. Joan of Arc stood in an empty place and carefully observed the surroundings. On the roof of a residential building behind Joan of Arc, Black Assassin Jack the Ripper's figure emerged. From now on, it will be hell. Black Assassin was seen in a pose, holding the two swords backward, and chanting. We are fire, we are rain. Strength, Merry Ripper. The moment he shouted out the noble phantasm, Black Assassin rushed to Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc immediately sensed the danger and quickly condensed the armor and the holy flag. Clank. What? Black Assassin Jack the Ripper shouted in disbelief. His pair of daggers were blocked by something invisible. Wuming appeared, holding the meteor silver, and was in a stalemate with Jack's daggers. Long time no see, Assassin Jack the Ripper. The moment he saw Jack the Ripper, Wuming recalled all kinds of information about Jack before. Wuming lifted Jack and sent him flying. Jack flipped in the air and stabilized his body when he landed. Why? How can you be okay? Jack's noble phantasm, Merry Ripper, used 4 level D daggers to inflict curse-type damage on enemies with specific conditions. When the conditions were met, there would be a curse effect of resentment. It was said that there were more than 80,000 prostitutes in London slums who were killed and thrown away for the sake of living. There were 3 conditions. Nate, female, fog. If Jack used his noble phantasm when all the conditions were met, the target's internal organs would immediately be pulled out of the body and become a corpse to be dissected. If the conditions were not met, it would only inflict damage, but at this time, every time the conditions were met, the power would also increase. But, big brother and big sister, why are you okay? Jack's noble phantasm was not a dagger attack, but a curse, so it could be used from a distance. That meant it could be targeted from a distance. Even if someone blocked the noble phantasm, the targeted person would be hurt. Jack was a little confused. Even if it couldn't cause a fatal blow to the opponent, it should at least cause some damage. But Jack looked at Wuming. He clearly hit Wuming, but he didn't see any effect. And Joan of Arc, who was behind him, also didn't seem to be affected. How can using a curse on the Mystic Dragon work? Wuming said sarcastically. Mystic Dragon EX, entangled by the so-called curse of being possessed by the Mystic Dragon, cursed as a dragon with huge magical power, basically ignoring all negative effects. The curse of 80,000 abandoned babies is not enough. Wu Ming shouted. And I have resistance to curses. Even if you hit me, it will only cause a little damage, and it can't cause fatal damage to me at all. Joan of Arc, who was holding the holy flag, said. What was needed to defend against the effect of this noble phantasm was not physical defense, but resistance to curses. It happened that Joan of Arc, as a saintess, naturally had resistance to curses, and her level was not low. Surrender, Jack. If you surrender now, I won't kill you. Sigh. Chapter 78. Sigh. Not only Jack was puzzled, but even Jean was also puzzled. If you surrender now, I will restrict your freedom until the end of the Holy Grail War, Wu Ming continued. For some reason, Wu Ming rejected the original plan to get rid of Jack the Ripper. But Jean seemed to want to say something. However, Wu Ming interrupted her. Let me be willful for once, Jean. Okay then. After all, Jean and Cedric were close friends who had gone through life and death together. After thinking for a while, Jean, who couldn't think of a reason, decided to believe in Cedric, who was also Wu Ming. After seeing Jean agree, Wu Ming smiled. Then he said to Jack, how about it, have you thought about it? Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. It must be very disadvantageous for you to go against us. Wu Ming looked at Jack, whose body was wrapped in bandages, and saw at a glance that Jack's injury caused by Wu Ming hadn't recovered yet. I refuse, big brother, what are you talking about? We are enemies now. Jack's innocent face looked at Wu Ming expressionlessly. Is that so? Is that your answer? Wu Ming closed his eyes and said. Then I will completely defeat you. Wu Ming opened his eyes, and red vertical pupils appeared in his black pearl-like eyes. The shiny silver armor was instantly donned. Wu Ming held his knight's sword and rushed towards Jack in an instant. Jack also came prepared this time. At the moment Wu Ming moved, he also jumped back and threw a child out of the darkness. Wu Ming held the child, looked at Jack who jumped on the roof and began to retreat, and quickly handed the child to Jean. Jean, I'll leave him to you. No problem, don't worry, go after him. After Jean took the child, Wu Ming looked in Jack's direction. Jack jumped onto the roof, looked at Wu Ming, and began to jump from house to house. Meanwhile, Wu Ming stomped the ground with his right foot, releasing a large amount of mana. With Wu Ming's right foot as the center, spiderweb-like cracks appeared on the ground. Wu Ming directly charged into the sky, bursting toward Jack, who was constantly jumping on rooftops. What? Jack felt Wu Ming catching up. He turned around and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Jack hurriedly changed directions and jumped into the complicated and narrow residential streets in an instant, sprinting quickly. With Jack's dexterity, coupled with his aura-blocking A's skill, it was reasonable to say that escaping should not be a problem. However, a few arrows were shot from a distance in front of Jack's path. Now, Jack couldn't slow down at all. If he slowed down, Wu Ming would catch up. But if he didn't slow down, the arrow in front of him would definitely hit him. There was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. Jack was on guard against Wu Ming catching up and waiting for him. While holding a dagger, he was ready to cut off the arrows. Just as Jack cut off these arrows, suddenly a special arrow that was twice as fast as the previous arrows burst toward him. Jack was just about to use his dagger to hit the arrow when Wu Ming, who was behind him, shouted, "Don't even think about it." Wu Ming gathered his mana on the meteor's silver sword, held the hilt with a backhand grip, and threw it out like a javelin. Jack knew that he couldn't block this blow, so he could only use his dagger to block the sword's trajectory. Poochie! The arrow that burst out directly shot through one of Jack's legs. Because of the impact of the arrow, Jack's leg was directly broken. The broken part showed a golden state of spirit, and Jack fell weakly to the street. Jack looked at Wuming, who was chasing over, and no one knew what he was thinking. Wuming didn't launch an attack and just watched. Then Wuming felt a wave of spatial fluctuations, and Jack disappeared in front of Wuming's eyes. Sure enough, it's a command spell again. Wuming stood on a building and watched Jack disappear. But Wuming had already suffered once, and he definitely wouldn't suffer again. When Jack attacked Fio last time, Jack had been marked by Wuming's magic trap. Although there was a time limit, in the current situation, there was plenty of time. As long as he wasn't far away from Wuming, he wouldn't be able to get rid of Wuming's pursuit. At this moment, the marked Jack in Wuming's eyes was like a lighthouse in the dark sea, very conspicuous. And in order to prevent Jack from being summoned away by his master with a command spell again, Wuming and Jean deliberately chose to act as bait in the central area of Tuliphis. In the center of Tuliphis, Wuming could almost perceive 80% of the area with Tuliphis as the center of the circle. In this way, even if his master used a command spell to summon Jack away again, even if Jack led Jean away a little before, it wouldn't have much impact on Wuming's perception of Jack. In case of accidents, Wuming also prepared a tool to enhance the magic of intelligence. Of course, the premise of this series of conditions was that Jack's master was in Tuliphis, otherwise Wuming couldn't do anything. According to Wuming's inference through his sword, Jack was seriously injured and couldn't leave Tuliphis in such a short time. He could only kill people in Tuliphis and dig out their hearts to replenish his magic power. Otherwise, as long as he accidentally encountered a black side or a red side servant, he wouldn't even have the power to protect himself. Sure enough, the mark on Jack's body moved to the opposite direction of Wuming's pursuit of Jack. It seemed that the other side had already discussed it. When they were defeated, they would run in the opposite direction, and then the master would use a command spell to summon Jack back. However, the other side may not have thought that Wuming's combat power was so strong that Jack almost died here. In this way, as long as we find the location of his master, then we won't be afraid of Jack escaping again. With that, Wuming instantly turned around, released his magic power, and burst toward the place where Wuming sensed at the moment. However, the roof that Wuming was standing on was already shattered to the point that it couldn't be any more shattered. It woke up the people who were sleeping in the house. In a house, next to a corpse, a woman was holding Jack, who was running on the street before. She had long green straight hair to her waist, a green off-shoulder skirt, a brown jacket with black fluff on the jacket, and a pair of black knee-high boots on her legs. She looked like a woman with the temperament of a rich young lady. This was the current master of Black Assassin Jack the Ripper, the person who was sacrificed by the former master Xiangliang Leopard Horse, Six Guides Ling Xia. "Jack, are you okay?" Six Guides Ling Xia asked Jack with an unusually gentle tone, while touching her head and looking at her short legs that were still spiritualized. "It hurts, Mom, it hurts." Jack choked with tears in the corner of her eyes. If it wasn't for the bloodstains, daggers, and broken legs on her body, anyone would think that she was a cute child who was bullied. Moreover, the "we" Jack was referring to was herself, not her and Six Guides Ling Xia. Because Wuming had said before that Jack used the curse of 80,000 abandoned babies, which meant that her true body was 80,000 abandoned babies. "Okay, Mom will take you out of here." With that, Six Guides Ling Xia stood up, picked up Jack, who couldn't move because of her broken legs, and walked toward the door. Click, Six Guides Ling Xia opened the door and walked out. Whoosh! Chapter 79. Puchi. It was the sound of an arrow piercing into a body. Plop. Sixth Guide Reen collapsed to the ground, and together with Jack, she fell. A sharp arrow pierced through the two of them. In the distance, Atlanta maintained her shooting posture and looked at the two pairs of figures that fell in the distance. "Mom! Mom!" Jack laid in Sixth Guide Reen's arms and struggled to raise her head to look at her. Sixth Guide Reen opened her eyes with difficulty and looked at Jack, who was pierced with her. She raised her hand and stroked Jack's face. Jack. It's okay. I'll use the last command incantation. Jack, even without me, you'll be fine. A red light flashed, and the last command incantation in Sixth Guide Reen's hand disappeared. Then, Sixth Guide Reen lowered her hand and closed her eyes. Mom. Mom, whoosh. Poochie. Another arrow shot into Jack's body. Jack could no longer hold on and fell down. Atlanta walked out of the thick fog, looked at the mother and daughter, and shook her head. Such a young child, and yet she became a heroic spirit. She sighed as she spoke. However, at this moment, Jack's corpse moved. Jack stood up as if nothing had happened, and stood up together with the arrow that pierced her and Sixth Guide Reen. Atlanta quickly jumped back and aimed at her with her bow. Jack turned her body and stood in front of Atlanta. Her head suddenly turned 90 degrees, looked at Atlanta, and said, "Why? Why? Poochie." Then, Jack's body suddenly burst open, and a huge cloud of smoke instantly spread out with Jack as the center. The smoke enveloped Atlanta and Wooming, who had already rushed over, and even Jean d'Arc, who was holding a child in the distance, was also involved. A large amount of magic smoke filled Wooming. Wooming closed his eyes and used his mind's eye and his magic detection to explore the surrounding environment. "This is an inherent enchantment," Wooming said in surprise. When the smoke dissipated, the scene in front of Wooming had completely changed. Wooming was now at the intersection of an alley. Wooming frowned and looked around. Decay and dilapidation filled this era. The smog produced by industrial production completely covered the city. Everything in front of him, the walls, the ground, and the houses were all grayish-black, an uncomfortable color. Looking at the newspaper that was blown by the wind, Wooming reached out and grabbed it. What entered his eyes was a large amount of English. "I see. If I'm not mistaken, this should be England in 1888. Wooming tossed the newspaper aside and began to walk out of the alley. Just as he was about to reach the main street, he heard a cry for help. "Let go of me. Help." Wooming looked in the direction of the cry for help. It was a burly man with a beer bottle who was bullying a teenage girl. The girl's face was covered with a thick layer of foundation. Her face was made up like a young married woman, and her lips were painted with bright red lipstick. Her face and body did not match at all. For such a young child to come out with such thick makeup, Wooming could already tell what this young girl did for a living. "Stop!" Wooming shouted. Even if he knew that all of this was Jack the Ripper's imagination, an illusion created by the inherent enchantment, Wooming could not help but stop this scene. When the man noticed that there was someone else, he hurriedly ran away. When the girl saw Wooming, she also ran away in a panic. However, the place she escaped to was the main street. The moment the girl left the street, a carriage rushed towards her. In her desperate eyes, the carriage was getting closer and closer to her. Wooming reached out his hand and pulled the young girl back before she could react. The girl looked at Wooming and did not say anything, nor did she have any intention of thanking him. Once, she turned around and prepared to run away. "Is this the environment you live in, Jack?" Hearing this sentence, the girl paused for a moment, then turned her head to look at Wooming. "That's right. This is the miserable world in which we abandoned babies by those prostitutes live." Looking at Wooming, who still wanted to say something, she did not intend to listen. Instead, she turned around and left. The girl looked at Wooming's departure and froze in place. Then, she also left Wooming's perception range, not knowing where she went. Because of the Industrial Revolution, England became unprecedentedly powerful, and after becoming powerful, it brought about decadent prosperity. Although not everyone was decadent, from the current living situation and the inherent enchantment, these children must not be living well. The reason why Wuming decided not to kill Jack, and even ignored one of the Jacks he met just now, was because Wuming felt that they should not bear this kind of pain and this kind of curse. As for whether he could save Jack, Wuming already had some ideas in his mind. After all, he was also called a hero. The most important thing is to find Jihan first. With her personality, she will definitely release Jack. At this time, Jihan met Jack. No, it should be said that Jack found Jihan himself. Jihan walked on the smoke-filled street, looked around at the streets that were completely different from Tulifas, and said, "This is London." Looking at the illusory black undead passers-by on the road, Jihan frowned. This is the Black Assassin's dream, her nightmare. At this moment, Jack, whose body had become abnormally small, quietly appeared behind Jihan, and then bursts of smoke began to surround Jihan. And Jihan seemed to have sensed it, and her body emitted light, dispelling the surrounding smoke. And Jack, on the other hand, fled in a hurry. Jihan turned around and looked in the direction Jack escaped. There. After saying that, she followed. On the other side, Wuming was looking for Jack's body with his intuition and accidentally found a pair of acquaintances. Sieg. Astolfo. How did you get here? Wuming looked at Sieg, who was being comforted by Astolfo, and said, "Ah. It's Sodric, that's great. Just now we learned that Jack's master used a command spell, and we searched according to the magic source that Sharon accidentally found. Just when we landed, a cloud of smoke suddenly surrounded me and Master, and just now, something like an illusion appeared. Master couldn't accept it for a while, so I was comforting him." Astolfo explained. Sodric. Mr. Sieg raised his lowered head and looked at Wuming with unusually tired eyes. "Is that real? Ryder told me that it's not real." But Wuming looked at Sieg and said, "Since you saw it, you must accept it, Sieg." After hearing this sentence, Sieg's eyes instantly widened. "In other words, it's all real," Sieg said with an "I knew it" expression. "But the people or things you've been in contact with these days are not fake. I can only say that humans are such an animal." Looking at Sieg, who was still in a daze, Wuming looked at Astolfo. "Astolfo, I'll leave Sieg to you. You stay here and protect him, don't let him run around again." Oh. I got it." After saying that, Wuming turned and left. He still had to find Jack. Chapter 80. Joan of Arc chased Jack until a dead end, where Jack could no longer escape. Joan of Arc looked at Jack, who stopped moving forward, and said, "What, you're not going to run anymore?" The young Jack looked at Joan of Arc, who exuded a holy aura, and said in fear, Are you not afraid of Jack the Ripper?" Joan of Arc shook her head calmly. "All of you are nothing more than victims of a tragedy." Jack was also relatively calm. With a wave of her hand, several children appeared in the smoke around them. They were boys and girls. The oldest was about 11 or 12 years old, and the youngest was about 4 or 5 years old. These children began to ask Joan of Arc for help. "Joan of Arc, Lady Joan of Arc, Lady Joan of Arc, please save us. I'm counting on you. Save poor Jack." They raised their hands and moved in the direction of Joan of Arc like a group of ghosts. Joan of Arc said without changing her expression, "I can't do it." In an instant, these children stopped their actions and looked at Joan of Arc with their eyes wide open. "You have been absorbed by the legend of Jack the Ripper." Then, Joan of Arc's right hand began to glow. "Even if I can beat you down, I can't save you." Looking at the children who retreated with wide eyes, Joan of Arc continued. "You should understand now. The swelling hatred and the despair of the victims have changed you and turned you into the legend of Jack the Ripper. The young Jack's body retreated in disbelief with a look of despair on his face. Joan of Arc raised her hand and looked at Jack. At this moment, an arrow was shot at Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc retreated abruptly, and the light on her hand disappeared. Joan of Arc looked at Atlanta, who was standing on the roof next to her, and said, "What do you want to do?" "Red Archer." Atlanta jumped in front of the children, protected the children, and then pointed her bow at Joan of Arc. "That's what I want to say. What do you want to do?" "These are all children. Innocent children. These children aren't even evil. They're just sacrificial lambs. They are sad souls crushed by the structure of the world," Atlanta said with a ferocious expression. "If you want to kill them, then I won't let you off." Jean looked at Atlanta and said with a firm and serious expression, "You should also understand that if these children are alive, they will only have more companions." "Shut up. Returning the soul is salvation." "What kind of salvation is that?" Atlanta roared. Then, he shot an arrow filled with anger. He didn't know if it was because of anger or Jean's technique, but Jean just tilted her head slightly and avoided the arrow. "Then let me ask you, you chose to hold the holy flag on the battlefield instead of drawing your sword. Isn't it because you don't want to kill? Isn't it because you don't want your hands to be stained with blood?" Atalanta asked. "What do you think, Red Archer?" Jean said thoughtfully. "Do you think that because I didn't use my sword, I didn't stain my hands with blood? Ever since I decided to participate in that war, my hands have been stained with blood. It was also because of Sodric who helped me share the blood that I was called the Saintess by later generations. If you really think so, you are not the Saintess at all." Atlanta was angry again. "Because of this, I never thought of myself as the Saintess," Jean said naturally. "What?" Atlanta was a little surprised. "That's right, Atlanta." "Who?" Atlanta's arrow pointed to another place. Wuming slowly walked out of the dark street. "It's you." Atlanta looked at Wuming nervously. After all, Wuming's combat power was not to be underestimated. The Red Side servant saw the Starlight Pillar in the Sky Garden of Semiramis that day. "I'm not some general who saved the country. Those titles were just given to us by our descendants. Just like Vlad, he was slandered as a vampire, and now he really is a vampire. Just like Jack, he was turned into the Ripper. This is the tragedy of a heroic spirit," Wu Ming said to Jack. Jean just wanted to end the war, to end this evil. It was only because the Lord said that Jean couldn't stand it anymore that Jean joined the war. And Wu Ming also joined the army because he was worried about Jean. Jean was more and more like a saintess by the Lord's revelation, but Wu Ming was different. Except for saving the country, Wu Ming had been doing things his own way. Sodric had the adventurer skill, which showed how unstable Wu Ming was. Then Jean spoke again. "This is the world of their memories, just a fantasy born of residual thoughts. Do you want those children to suffer in this ambiguous world forever, Archer? So, please get out of the way." Jean's eyes were full of light, and Atlanta flinched. She put down the bow in her hand. "But I refuse," Atlanta said as if she was holding back. "If I refuse them, if I refuse these children, then who can love them again? Your God." Atlanta looked at Jean fiercely. "I will never let you kill them, ruler." However, at that moment, one of Jack's avatars, the blonde girl that Wu Ming saw before, slowly walked toward Jean. "Is there no other way? Do you really want to kill us?" Jean lowered her head, and the bangs in front of her covered her eyes, making people unable to see Jean's eyes. But in Wu Ming's view, Jean must be very uncomfortable. "Enough, Jean." Wu Ming walked behind Jean and said, "You've done enough. Leave the rest to me. Jean looked at Wu Ming in confusion. It seems that Wu Ming doesn't mean to kill Jack for her. Then what is it? Does Wu Ming really have a way to save these children who have become Jack the Ripper? After that, Wu Ming walked in front of Jean and turned into the blonde girl looking at Wu Ming. You are the resentful spirits absorbed by the legend of Jack the Ripper. Strictly speaking, you are also Jack the Ripper. In other words, you have your own Valhalla. Then, Wu Ming stretched out one of his hands, which exuded a star-like light. The other children began to merge with the blonde girl. After the girl in front of him merged with other children, she changed back to Black Assassin, the white-haired Jack. Wu Ming touched Jack's hair with his hand, closed his eyes slightly, and smiled. I will let you get rid of the legend of Jack the Ripper, please believe me. After Jack froze for a moment, he looked at the gentle big brother in front of him and nodded heavily. Okay. Chapter 81. After seeing Jack nodded with a smile, Wu Ming began the ritual. He closed his eyes, and the glowing hand that touched Jack's hair shone brightly, instantly drowning the surroundings, making Jean and Atlanta unable to open their eyes. At that moment, Wu Ming and Jack were in a sealed space. Wu Ming looked at Jack, who had her eyes closed, and then looked around. In addition to Wu Ming and Jack, there was a lot of black smoke in that space. The black smoke exuded an unusual aura. Is this Jack the Ripper's curse? Wu Ming looked at the black smoke and frowned. Jack, who had her eyes closed, opened her eyes, and saw Wu Ming and Jack the Ripper's curse that had been entangling them. Jack looked a little panicked at the moment. Although those curses had been with them for almost 200 years, they were still afraid when they saw those curses at the moment. Wu Ming stepped forward and hugged Jack, saying softly, It's okay, Jack, I'm here. Jack didn't know why, but after hearing Wu Ming and the others' words, she calmed down and felt that those curses were not so terrible. Because of resentment, you became a collection of resentment, but because you were absorbed by Jack the Ripper's curse, you had to become Jack the Ripper, unable to reincarnate, and have been cursed. Jack looked at Wu Ming in confusion, not knowing what Wu Ming meant. Wu Ming touched Jack and the other's little head and continued. So if someone takes your place to bear Jack the Ripper's curse, doesn't that mean you're liberated? Jack stared at Wu Ming in disbelief. They already understood what Wu Ming meant. But, in that case, big brother, I will become Jack the Ripper, right? Wu Ming smiled. Don't worry, I'm the demonic dragon, I won't even blink an eye for a curse of more than 200 years. Wu Ming's plan was to absorb Jack's curse into his body by communicating with Jack's soul. In that way, they would just be resentful spirits. Finally, with Joan of Arc's prayer, he could purify the resentful spirits and let them enter heaven or reincarnate. Then, I'll start, little Jack. Wu Ming closed his eyes, and his body emitted a faint light. The surrounding black smoke began to struggle to be absorbed by Wu Ming's body. Wu Ming vaguely seemed to hear someone struggling. That's Jack the Ripper. Wu Ming thought. Soon, at a speed visible to the naked eye, the black fog was completely absorbed by Wu Ming. Now, the entire space was no longer shrouded by the black fog, and it was no longer so eerie and terrifying. However, because of the resentful spirits, there was a trace of coldness here. Okay, now you're no longer Jack. Wu Ming took a deep breath and said to the souls in front of him. Are we really saved? She shed tears and looked at Wu Ming in disbelief. I promise. She hugged Wu Ming excitedly and cried. Thank you. They just kept thanking him, and this was the only way to express their feelings. Then, let's go out. Okay. Outside. When the star-like light emitted by Wu Ming no longer flickered, Joan of Arc and Atlanta opened their eyes. At this moment, they found that they were no longer in the inherent enchantment, but returned to Tolofus. Sieg and Astolfo, who were also swept into the inherent enchantment before, also appeared on the street not far away. As for the dense fog, it had also disappeared. After reacting, both Joan of Arc and Atlanta looked at the place where Wuming and Jack were before. They found that there was only a child with an illusory body beside Wuming at this moment, and Jack's servant reaction had disappeared. I've rescued Jack from Jack the Ripper's curse. Now she's no longer Jack, she's just a collection of vengeful spirits. Wuming explained to them. Then Wuming looked at Joan of Arc and said, Jean, pray for them. At this moment, Joan of Arc was also relieved. After all, if it was just a resentful spirit, as long as it was purified, it could be reincarnated like an ordinary soul. Wuming looked at Atlanta, who was at a loss, and then looked at the liberated Jack and said, What do you want to do? Jack, that's not Jack. Jack, who was no longer Jack, went directly to Atlanta. Hey, Sister Atlanta, thank you. Thank you for protecting us until the end. We are leaving now to start our new life. Goodbye. Atlanta looked at the child who said so and shed tears. The black fog on her right hand also disappeared at this moment. Atlanta wiped her tears and said to Jack with a smile, Go, I wish you happiness. Then, under Joan of Arc's prayer, Jack turned into a little starlight and disappeared. Before disappearing, Wuming vaguely heard, Thank you, big brother, goodbye, Jack. Then Wuming shook his head again. Obviously, Jack was no longer Jack, and he was Jack. Then, Wuming looked at Atlanta. So, do you have anything to say, Atlanta? Atlanta seemed to have turned back into the famous huntress because some of the curses around her body had disappeared. I have nothing to say. Thank you, Sodric. Atlanta looked at Wuming, her eyes full of gratitude. Atlanta looked at Joan of Arc again. I will beat you down and make you agree with my idea of all children can be saved, ruler. Atlanta was like a hero, challenging another hero. Joan of Arc smiled bitterly. Ah! With a roar, Frankenstein fell from the sky and hammered at Atlanta with a giant hammer. Atlanta dodged nimbly, then looked at Wuming again with gratitude, jumped on the roof, and left. Are you okay? I couldn't find you just now. After a while, the thick fog suddenly disappeared. Berserker, who was sent by His Highness Cowles to look for you, saw the Red Archer and thought you were attacked, so he rushed up directly, Karen said through telepathy. It's okay. The Black Assassin has been dealt with. Let's talk about what happened later, Wuming replied. Then Wuming and Joan of Arc, as well as Astolfo, who was supporting Sieg, and Frankenstein, who came to support, returned to Mylnia Citadel. Tolofus returned to its peaceful state. None of the residents here knew that the man-killer fiend incident had been dealt with while they were asleep. Chapter 82. The next day, noon, Myrenia Citadel, conference room. Because they dealt with Jack the Ripper at night, it was almost midnight by the time everything was settled. Therefore, they decided to schedule the meeting at noon. Fiore sat at the head of the table and looked at the people sitting on both sides. Wuming, Jean, Sieg, Astolfo, Collins, Sharon, Gold, Lion Gielli, and Mordred. Because they were going to discuss the final strategy for the Sky Garden, Lion Gielli and Mordred arrived very early. Because Frankenstein was still a berserker, he didn't participate in this meeting. Black Assassin, Jack the Ripper's matter is finally settled. I would like to thank Miss Jean and Mr. Sodlek. Because she couldn't move, Fiore only slightly lowered her head to express her gratitude. This is also my responsibility as the ruler, Jean shook her head and said, indicating that Fiore didn't need to thank her anymore. As the offender, I only listened to the words of the ruler. No need to thank me, Wuming smiled. Speaking of which, are you ready to attack the Sky Garden? Jean asked. Yes, we have prepared many planes. When the time comes, we can directly fly to the Sky Garden. Just then, Astolfo stood up and raised his hand. I said, I know how to fly a plane. Let me fly it. Seeing Astolfo's excited face, Wuming smiled helplessly. We need more than one plane. It is really inconvenient for you to fly it. The planes are all for magic puppets to fly, Collins interrupted. Astolfo sat down with a depressed face. Although we have prepared many planes, we still lack a trump card. After all, the Sky Garden has automatic magic cannons comparable to the EX level. Therefore, for the current situation, we are still at a disadvantage. Just then, Wuming raised his hand. I have a way to directly enter the Sky Garden, but I need to know what the inside of the Sky Garden looks like. Wuming's method was Portal Scroll. Currently, Wuming was a saber, so he couldn't use Portal Scroll. However, if it was a scroll, after knowing the location, he could open the portal in 3 or 4 days. Then, Wuming opened Dragonist and took out a golden scroll. Putting it in the center of the table, Wuming began to explain. This is a high-level magic scroll called Portal. It can connect any 2 known locations to teleport magic, provided that you have the images of the 2 locations in your mind. Then Wuming looked at Sharon and said, Sharon, if you have been to the Sky Garden and are the teacher of the great heroes of Greek mythology, you should be able to use this scroll, right? Everyone looked at Sharon. Sharon picked up the scroll and carefully observed it for a while, then said, This is a kind of magic scroll similar to Norse mythology. I think I should be able to use it, but I still have to prepare in advance. After all, this is a magic scroll comparable to magic. What? Everyone was shocked, especially Fiori, Cowles, and Golder, who were humans. You said this is a magic scroll comparable to magic. Gold swallowed. After all, magic in this world was different from magic. Magic was the general term for the act of artificially recreating mysteries and miracles. Even if it was an incredible and mysterious phenomenon, as long as it was caused by nature, it was not magic. In short, it was man-made and natural factors. And magicians had an iron rule: they couldn't show mysteries to the world. When a magician performed magic, if ordinary people saw it, they must forget it, or let them think that it was done with technology. Anyway, they could either kill the ordinary person or make them lose their memory. They must not let ordinary people know the existence of magic. As for why, it was because of mystery. A long time ago, when civilization was not civilized, basically all magic was called magic. And people who used magic were called magicians. Now, as more and more people knew about magic, magic was slowly reduced to magic. Hiding was the essence of magic. The more people knew and used it, the power of magic would be scattered and weakened. Because magic was the use of power that had been determined in the root, the more people knew, the weaker its power would be. Just like 10 portions of power being used by one person was the same as being used by 10 people. The fewer people knew, the fewer people would use it. That was why magicians tried to avoid magic from being discovered by ordinary people. And there was a clear difference between magic and magic. Magic could be achieved by modern technology, but magic could not be achieved by modern technology. No matter how long it took, no matter how much money it took, as long as it was achieved by modern means, it was magic. For example, fireball could be achieved by modern technology, and fireball was magic. For example, time travel could not be achieved by modern technology, and time travel was magic. Of course, the magic Silent learned in Nazarik's underground tomb and the magic of the moon world were 2 different things. They were not the same thing. Yes, I got this scroll when I became a dragon and traveled to other worlds, so judging by the level, it's almost comparable to an A-level noble phantasm. Because of my current rank, I can't use it normally. After all, teleportation gate was already a very advanced teleportation skill in Yggdrasil. It ignored the distance. As long as the scene in a certain place, it could connect two teleportation gates. There was no limit to the number of teleportation gates, and there was no time limit to the activation of the teleportation gate. It could only be used after reaching a certain level. Then, that's all for the meeting. We just need to wait for Archer to prepare the activation scroll. Fiol said and sighed with relief. That's it. Let's prepare for the battle in a few days. Wuming stood up and said. In the corridor, Wuming and Joan of Arc walked side by side. No one spoke. They all wanted to quietly enjoy this temporary encounter. After all, Wuming aside, Joan of Arc will return to her Hall of Valhalla after the Holy Grail War. Hey, Sodric. You must win the battle in a few days. Yeah. It was just a few short sentences, but the feelings contained within them were boundless. While the two were enjoying this brief moment, Mordred caught up from behind. Hey! Villo, let's go eat. Ha! Wuming made a strange sound. Why do you suddenly want to eat with me? Wuming looked at Mordred and asked in confusion. It's not because Master said he wanted to go back to the tomb to prepare. I don't want to go back, and I haven't had a big meal in this city yet. Let's go. After saying that, Mordred used her slender arms to wrap around Wuming's neck, wanting to take large strides forward. Wuming looked back at Joan of Arc helplessly and apologized with his eyes. Joan of Arc was taken aback, but after she reacted, she said softly, Sodric, enjoy your meal. Then, Joan of Arc turned around and left. Chapter 83. Mordred dragged Wuming to a restaurant that Mordred said was delicious. Then, under the usual gaze of the restaurant owner, he served Mordred a dozen dishes. Wuming, on the other hand, ordered a few dishes symbolically, and then looked at Mordred, who began to gorge herself, and could not help but mutter softly. Could it be that the Pendragon family are all big eaters? King Yusef is the same. He usually eats a lot, but Leah eats even more. Now Mordred is eating so much. I'm starting to wonder if the Pendragon family has two stomachs. Mordred, who was happily eating, glanced at Wuming, tilted her head and said, Did you say anything? No, why would I? Hurry up and eat. It won't taste good when it's cold. With that, Wuming also picked up the cutlery and began a war of tongues. By the way, this tastes good. Wuming's mouth moved as he said. Right? The food in this restaurant is superb. Ah. With that, Mordred took another bite. Yes. Wuming looked at Mordred somewhat dotingly. Logically speaking, Mordred is also my daughter, because Morgan Le Fay wanted to create an invincible weapon to help her seize the throne of King Arthur. Morgan Le Fay also collected Wuming's bloodline and mixed her bloodline with Artoria's and Wuming's bloodline to finally create Mordred. Because Wuming's root dragon bloodline was too powerful, the Wuming bloodline in Mordred's body was very thin. Although the root dragon bloodline in Mordred's body was thin, she was still Wuming's daughter. As mentioned before, Mordred was not liked by the others in the Knights of the Round Table. Only Wuming approached Mordred with the intention of avoiding the tragedy of King Arthur's son destroying Arthur's dynasty. After all, Wuming knew the legend of King Arthur. But as the days passed, Wuming found that Mordred's personality was too simple, like a child who had just been born for a few years. Moreover, Mordred had a great admiration for King Arthur. In addition, Wuming's previous encounters with Skaha, Maeve, and Cuchulainn did not match the characters he knew. Wuming's understanding of Skaha was that he was a cold and indifferent godslayer who could not abandon talented people. But Wuming's master was like a big sister next door. Of course, that was her state outside of training and battle. As for Maeve, legend had it that she was a wanton young woman, an arrogant and intelligent woman. But Wu Ming's Maeve was somewhat arrogant, but her character was not wanton. Then there was Cuchulain. Legend had it that Cuchulain was a warrior with a fiery temper and was extremely cruel. He often violated the agreement and killed several people in sneak attacks. Wu Ming's Cuchulain was a pure warrior and was not cruel. As for violating the agreement and killing people by sneak attacks, Wu Ming felt that it was even more ridiculous. Wu Ming's Cuchulain was not that kind of person. This led Wu Ming to seriously suspect that the legends of this world were seriously inconsistent with the legends he knew, so Wu Ming no longer used the characters he knew. Wu Ming began to treat them as unknown people. In the subsequent contact with Mordred, Mordred seemed to have discovered that she had a connection with them, so she often avoided Wu Ming. This led to the relationship between the two of them being good and bad. When they were bad, they would speak ill of each other and fight with each other. When they were good, they would play together and eat together. Although Mordred also wore a helmet when eating, which was worth complaining about. Wu Ming shook his head and looked back at Mordred, who was happily eating, and smiled. What's wrong? Why are you suddenly smiling? Mordred looked at Wu Ming, who was smiling. Wu Ming picked up a fork and took a bite of the beef. Enjoying the juicy beef, he replied absent-mindedly, "Nothing, I just thought of something happy." That's strange. Mordred did not look at Wu Ming and resumed her hunt for food. At this time, the door of the shop was opened and a pair of figures walked in. Mr. Sodrick and Red Saber. Wu Ming and Mordred looked at the door and saw Sieg Astolfo standing there looking at them. Mordred said unhappily, "What's the meaning of and Red Saber? I feel like I'm hooked up with him. Damn it." Despite Mordred's words, she did not get angry and continued eating. Sieg Astolfo, on the other hand, stood there and smiled awkwardly. Wu Ming immediately said, "Since you're here, let's have a meal together." After a while, the shop owner served the dishes that Sieg and Astolfo ordered. However, Sieg and Astolfo did not eat and seemed to have something to say. "What is it? Just say it." Sieg hesitated for a while and looked at Wu Ming. "Mr. Sodrick, do you think there is a correct existence in human history?" Wu Ming put down his utensils and wiped his mouth with a napkin. "Is it about Jack the Ripper?" "Yes. Although it's not all of human history, but..." Sieg seemed to recall the scenes that he saw in Jack the Ripper's relic, the Dark Mist City. He did not say anything else. "So, Mordred, what do you think about this?" Wu Ming did not answer Sieg directly. Instead, he asked Mordred. "Huh? Why are you asking me all of a sudden?" Mordred raised her eyebrows and looked at Wu Ming. Mordred said as she chewed on the food in her mouth. "Humans are humans. They can be good or evil depending on the situation. At the end of the day, they are just a group of slightly smarter beasts." Then, she picked up a piece of pastry with a fork and put it into her mouth. They will only act under the influence of their own selfish desires. They will forget the kindness they received, but they will never forget their hatred. The value of protecting them is not even worth a copper coin. Mordred did not care about Sieg's eyes that were getting more and more confused. "That's not it. Humans are more interesting this way. That's why I..." Astolfo refuted. However, Mordred did not care and interrupted him. "What about you? What do you think?" Sieg thought for a moment and said. I think I like humans, at least before I knew about Assassin. What about now? I don't know. I always thought that protecting was the right thing to do, but now, whether this choice is the right one, I don't know." Looking at Sieg, who lowered his head, Wu Ming smiled. "Then, I'll congratulate you first, Sieg." "Ah." Sieg and Astolfo looked at Wu Ming in confusion. Because you have the right idea, Sieg. Wu Ming looked at Mordred. His gaze made Mordred uncomfortable. Then, he looked at Sieg. Let's not talk about whether what you are protecting is the right thing to do. At least you have the right approach. Regardless of the outcome, at least your starting point is good. Wu Ming took a sip of water and continued. For an android like you who has just been born, this is already a very good thing. Then Wu Ming looked at Mordred who had finished his meal and signaled with his eyes. Mordred understood. He stood up and walked to the door. Wu Ming also stood up. They were about to leave. You still have a lot to learn, Sieg. At least I can tell you that there is nothing wrong with protecting humans, but you have to distinguish between those who are worth protecting and those who are not. Mordred walked out of the restaurant, and Wu Ming followed closely behind. Wu Ming also left a sentence for Sieg. Only by protecting what is worth protecting, can you live up to that heart of yours. At this moment Sieg seemed to understand something, but also seemed to not understand something. In short, he no longer felt as tired as before. Oh yeah, help me pay the bill. Wu Ming's voice came after he walked away. Then Sieg and Astolfo fell to the ground and could not get up again. Chapter 84. 3 days later, in the evening, Black Caster's abandoned workshop. Everyone gathered there. Sharon was one step away from successfully implementing the portal scroll. As long as he injected magical power into it, he could open the portal. Because the portal scroll could instantly open a portal somewhere, Semiramis, who controlled the Sky Garden, would not notice anything unusual in advance. In those 3 days, the androids' bodies were abnormal, and Golder took the initiative to treat the androids. Sieg solved the heart demon and helped to treat the androids with Astolfo. Fiore transferred the magic seal to her brother Collins, during which Sharon needed to perform the ritual. Wu Ming had to temporarily replace Karen's control of the portal scroll. After that, Wu Ming accompanied Jean on a date and enjoyed the last time. During that time, they met Collins, who had been chatting with Frankenstein in the flowers. In short, everyone was very busy these days. Now, everyone began to attack the Sky Garden. Let's start, Archer, Fiore said. Yes. After that, Sharon injected a trace of magical power into the scroll, and a black and red hole appeared. Let's go, everyone, we must stop Shiro Amakusa, Jean said, wearing a blue armor, holding the holy flag in her hand. Yes. Everyone responded in unison. Jean, Wu Ming, Sharon, Astolfo, Frankenstein, Sieg, and Collins walked into the portal, and then the portal was closed. That was to prevent the enemy from attacking Fiore through the portal. Because Fiore's legs were inconvenient, and she had removed the magic seal, she was weak, so she was not allowed to fight in the final battle. There was also Golder, because his servant, Siegfried, had disappeared, so even if he went, he would not be able to do anything, so he stayed. Fiore looked at the disappearing portal, clenched her fists, and prayed. The Sky Garden. A black and red oval-shaped hole about the height of a person suddenly appeared in the deepest part of the abyss where Sharon had once been. Semiramis, who was sitting high on the throne, instantly sensed that someone used space magic to invade the Sky Garden. The Master is still inside the Great Holy Grail, so let us, the servants, hold him back for a while. With that, a few figures appeared under Semiramis's throne. Red Lancer Karna Red Archer Atlanta Red Rider Achilles Red Caster Shakespeare including the Red Assassin Semiramis who was sitting on the throne, all of the Red Team's servants were present. Of course, there was also the traitorous Red Saber Mordred and another Red Saber, Sodlek. Although Red Berserker Spartacus is dead, and Red Saber Mordred has betrayed us, and we are short of 2 servants, the enemy is in a worse state than us. I hope you won't disappoint me, heroes, Semiramis whispered in a strange tone. No, 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 I won't go to the battlefield, Empress of Assyria, Red Caster Shakespeare said exaggeratedly. TSK. Then go and protect the Great Holy Grail, Castor. Semiramis seemed to have no way to deal with Castor, who was like a psychopath, and directly ordered him to defend the rear. So, let's begin, the final battle of the Holy Grail War. On the other side, after Wu Ming and others came out of the portal, they immediately closed the portal. After that, except for Joan of Arc, everyone else was teleported away by the space magic of the Sky Garden. Joan of Arc looked around vigilantly, and then she had no choice but to move on. After all, time waits for no one, and she didn't have to worry about the comfort of others, they were all heroes. Somewhere in the Sky Garden, Achilles, who had green hair and a crossbow, was waiting quietly with his eyes closed. Suddenly, a brown-haired young man with a ponytail appeared. Sharon looked at Achilles, then looked around and said, "So, it's space magic." "Yes, and it's the best place for you and me to fight." Achilles opened his eyes and said. The relatively empty space was suitable for Sharon, who was the archer, and Achilles, who was the rider, to fight. On the other side of the Sky Garden, Collins, Frankenstein, Sieg, and Astolfo looked at the strange ancient Babylonian street in confusion. All of a sudden, an arrow flew towards them. Boom! Ah! Frankenstein knocked away the arrow with his hammer and roared. Red Archer! Collins panicked. Rider! Sieg shouted. Roger! Hippogriff, the illusory horse of the world. Astolfo summoned the eagle and flew with Sieg and Cowls. Berserker is responsible for the main attack, Red Archer, Rider is responsible for the feint attack, is that okay? Collins, Sieg, and Astolfo discussed. Well, no problem. Atlanta, who was in a hidden house, looked at Astolfo, who was in the air, and Frankenstein, who was rushing toward them, and she couldn't help but frown. Really, they said, one-on-one, need to contain the opponent's trump card, and each of them has to deal with one servant, but they actually want me to deal with 2 servants. Atlanta drew her bow again, but this time it was 2 arrows. Then, I will let you fall here. I present you with this calamity. Phoebos Cachi, Petition of the Arrow. Between the thrones of Semiramis, Mordred looked at the door and couldn't help but laugh. It seems that we have drawn the trump card, Master. But Gialli shook his head helplessly and said, if possible, I really don't want to draw the trump card. Although he said that, Gialli took the lead and said, let's go, Saber, let them see the power of the Knights of the Round Table. Ah! No problem. Master. In a virtual space, Wu Ming appeared here. Looking at the dim space around him, Wu Ming frowned. It seems that the opponent has a powerful noble phantasm, otherwise, I won't be transferred here. Following a series of footsteps, a fair-skinned man wearing golden armor and golden earrings walked over. He was holding a divine spear that was as bright as the sun. So, my opponent is you, Karna said. No wonder there is this space. If it is in the Sky Garden, it is afraid that you will break it, Karna, Wu Ming said. Although I've appeared in this world as Sodric, I've basically inherited all of Vero's treasures. For the time being, I should be able to put up a fight. Wu Ming condensed his armor and took out his meteor silver. Then, Wu Ming looked at Karna. So, let's begin, hero of charity. And Joan of Arc, under the guidance of the revelation, came to the Great Holy Grail. Oh. Welcome, Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc looked at Castor in front of her, frowned and said, please get out of the way, Castor Shakespeare, you can't beat me. Oh, do you think so? Shakespeare showed a mysterious smile, although I can't beat you, but, let's begin. First folio, the time for the show to begin is here, there should be thunderous cheers. Chapter 85. Achilles and Sharon stood facing each other. Achilles explained to Achilles the reason why he had helped Shiro Amakusa Shurjin. The third magic, Heaven's Feel. So that's how it is. With the power of the Great Holy Grail, it is indeed possible to materialize the soul and save the human race. Sharon was not pretentious and evaluated the idea from a third person's point of view. That's right. As a warrior, don't you think this is a dream worth gambling on, Sharon? Sharon. Achilles asked. Why? Why did you choose such a superficial path, Achilles? Sharon frowned and looked at Achilles in confusion. Rome was right. This was indeed a very superficial path. The history of the human race is the history of war. I have lost too many friends, too many people I loved deeply. If I can free people from their fate, this is what a hero should do. Achilles looked straight into Charon's eyes, his expression extremely serious. No. That's just arrogance. You don't want to fight against fate, you want to control it. Sharon retorted. In response, Achilles was somewhat disdainful. Although that's the case, aren't you still obsessed with your lost immortal body? That's right. Even if I become a legend, as a star shining in the sky, it is still the same. Sharon looked thoughtfully at the Sagittarius constellation in the sky. And even though Charon's parents never loved him from the beginning, and his mother even voluntarily became a Linden after giving birth to him, he still wanted to take back the proof of his blood relationship with his parents. Is that so? Even if you become a star, you can't get rid of your fate. This is what a hero is. After saying that, Achilles raised his gun and aimed at Sharon. Come on, Black Archer. Ah! Red Rider. Arrows flew, and the tip of the gun surged. The two kept jumping. Sometimes Achilles fought Sharon in close range, sometimes Sharon opened up a distance and shot at Achilles from afar. But overall, Achilles was at a disadvantage. What's wrong, Achilles? Is this all you can do? As your master, I am very disappointed. Damn it. Achilles dodged an arrow and said angrily. It was normal. After all, Achilles' moves were taught by Sharon. Basically, Sharon could almost predict what Achilles wanted to do as soon as he moved. Moreover, Sharon also had B+ clairvoyance and a mind's eye, true. Clairvoyance B+, good vision. Capture of distant targets. Dynamic vision increased. At the same time, mind's eye, true, can also achieve limited vision. Mind's eye, true insight cultivated through cultivation and forging. It was a battle theory that allowed one to calmly grasp one's own situation and the enemy's abilities while at a disadvantage and find a way out. With clairvoyance, Achilles' heel. Although it was only for a short moment, it was a blink of an eye could decide the outcome of the battle. As Charon's disciple, Achilles naturally knew of his master's abilities. So. Diatrikon Asterlonk, star of the soaring sky. Achilles instantly threw the spear to Sharon and activated his noble phantasm. The surrounding space froze. Sharon looked at the changes around him and said faintly, so that's your noble phantasm. Yes, this is a one-on-one duel. Unless one side wins, it can't be unlocked. Whether it's time, space, or luck, everything is ineffective here, including immortality and noble phantasm. Only your own power can work here, and if one side loses, the failure will also be transmitted to the other side. Although it's ineffective if the other side doesn't want to fight one-on-one, we are indeed in a one-on-one duel right now, and I believe you won't choose to run away. Sharon replied, so that's how it is. As long as I don't want to run away, this place won't disappear. And if I stay here, my future vision won't work. Then Achilles made a Pancreasin pose. Although I didn't want to fight you one-on-one before, it's different now. We have a trump card. Sharon then abandoned the bow in his hand. Since the noble phantasm won't work, I'll use Pancreson too. Sharon and Achilles bumped their fists. I'm Achilles, the son of the hero Peleus. I'm Sharon, the son of the great god Kronos. Then both of them said at the same time, let's fight. Let's fight. The two of them were on the verge of fighting. On the other side, there were colorful ripples in the sky, and arrows rained down from the sky. The places where the arrows hit were as if there was an explosion, and they kept exploding. Sieg, Astolfo, Frankenstein, and Cowles, who were in the arrow formation, could no longer be seen. However, Atlanta, who had released her noble phantasm, did not relax. In her senses, although the opponent's aura had weakened, it did not disappear. Then, streaks of green lightning shot out, destroying the countless arrows that were shot down. Astolfo rode on the eagle and carried Sieg. There were no traces of arrows on their bodies, and even their clothes were not wrinkled at all. Frankenstein, who had rushed forward, appeared next to Cowles. Command incantation. Atlanta said thoughtfully as she looked at Frankenstein, who had disappeared. Frankenstein's body was full of arrows, and his body was broken. Cowles, who was under his protection, was not hurt at all. Berserker. Cowles looked at Frankenstein, who was full of arrows, with an indescribable tone. After seeing the arrows, Cowles immediately used the command incantation to call back Frankenstein, who had rushed over. The Red Archer did not care about Berserker and deliberately set the range of his noble phantasm to his side. He was indeed a hero who left his name in history. Ugh hi! Frankenstein roared angrily as if he was angry that the opponent had attacked his master, and he was angry that he was hurt. Wait a minute, Berserker, let me treat your wound first, Cowles said to Frankenstein. At the same time, Cowles said to Astolfo and Sieg, who were flying in the air through spiritual communication, please ask Ryder to restrain Archer, or else we won't be able to rush over. Understood. Astolfo roared and rushed up with Sieg. Atlanta, who was hiding in the shadows, looked at the eagle rushing over from the sky and immediately drew her bow. After drawing the heavenly bow to its fullest, the rank a powerful arrow was shot out. Atlanta's noble phantasm, heavenly bow, could be strengthened to A level after fully drawing the bow. Astolfo knew the power of that arrow, so he did not choose to take it head-on, but chose to dodge. However, when Astolfo dodged, several more arrows were shot at him. While moving, the eagle frantically dodged the arrows. However, there was an arrow hidden behind another arrow. The arrow behind caught up with the arrow in front of it, causing the two arrows to deviate at the same time and shoot towards the eagle that had just dodged. That showed how amazing the archer's archery was. Astolfo knew that he could not avoid the arrow, but he did not panic. When the arrow hit the eagle, along with Astolfo and Sieg on its back, disappeared like a phantom. They reappeared somewhere in front of him. What? Is this dimensional jump? At that moment, the eagle had almost rushed to Atlanta, and Astolfo was also happy. That's right, this is Hippogriff's special ability, dimensional jump. Although it's only for a short time, tonight is indeed a moonless night. Don't underestimate me as one of Charlemagne's 12 warriors. Astolfo had a legend that the moon took away his rationality, so it was not surprising that Astolfo regained his rationality on a moonless night. Astolfo instantly poured his magical power into the eagle's body and activated the eagle's B-level noble phantasm. Although the eagle's level was inferior to the griffin, which was a divine beast, the crushing damage caused by its dash was comparable to a grade of physical attack. Go! Hippogriff! Chapter 86. In the room where the Assyrian Empress Semiramis was located, Semiramis was waiting for the intruder outside the door while thinking about the other servants' battles. As for the battle between the servants on the other battlefields, they might not have the confidence to win, but the red side servants had a great advantage over the black side servants. Although Karna said that he would not care about the others if he saw the black saber was already dead, so there was no problem. Although Atlanta was weaker than Karna, her opponents were Rider Astolfo and Berserker Frankenstein. Even if she couldn't win, she could still restrain them. How dare a brat talk back to me? If it was the red saber, he could deal with her. It would be uncomfortable if he didn't see her desperate face. As for Achilles and his master Sharon, Achilles promised that he would win, but even if he didn't win, it would be fine. After all, there was still Karna, and the master's words were about to come out. And Shakespeare's noble phantasm was restrained by Joan of Arc, so there was no need to worry at all. So it was about time. Semiramis finished thinking and looked at the door in front of her that opened automatically. A ferocious uncle with sunglasses and a non-mainstream girl walked in. She smiled. "Oh, there's actually someone guarding the house. You're really obedient, assassin." Mordred directly mocked her. Semiramis instantly changed from smiling to gnashing her teeth, but on the surface, she was still polite. "You're a bit arrogant for someone who has never sat on the throne before. What are you talking about? I'll just kick you down." Hearing Mordred's words, Semiramis couldn't help but smile. Then she smiled and said, "The reason why I use space teleportation to lead you here is that I want to personally teach you how to talk." Semiramis waved her hand, and several pipes stretched out from the surrounding walls, spraying a kind of lavender mist. At this moment, Mordred also noticed that the door was beginning to close. "It's a trap. Master." In an instant, Mordred roared and kicked the lion out of the door that was about to close. And because Mordred didn't use much strength, the lion quickly landed, and then quickly threw a crystal to Mordred, who was still in the room. The door closed. "Damn it. Saber, come to my side." One of the 4 command seals in Lion Jiali's hand disappeared, but the command seal's effect didn't happen. "What? The command incantation won't work anymore. I have some understanding of command incantations." Semiramis' voice suddenly sounded. She continued, "Although the time is short, I can also interfere with the master's contract with the servant, including command incantations." Damn it. Jiali the lion could only wait anxiously outside the door. Let's hope that Sodric's item is effective. Inside the door, the space was filled with a faint poisonous fog. Mordred put on his armor, and at the same time, he immediately poured a trace of magic power into the crystal that Lion Jiali threw in. In an instant, the power of the crystal enveloped Mordred, making the poisonous fog around Mordred unable to invade. What? This time, it was Semiramis who was shocked. What kind of item is that? It can actually block my poison. Mordred held the crystal that was emitting a faint light and said softly, "You've helped a lot, Villo. I'll treat you to a drink." This item was the one that Wuming gave every participant when he knew Semiramis' real name. At that time, Wuming said, "Semiramis is the most ancient poison killer. We are going to enter the poison killer's noble phantasm, so we have to be careful. Especially Sharon, if he falls into her trap, he'll be finished. But the rest of you, don't be careless. This crystal is an item that is used to resist poison. Just pour a trace of magic into it and it can be activated. Carry it with you, just in case." Mordred gave the crystal to Jiali. Mordred said that it was too much of a hindrance to carry it, and that it would be used when the time came. Jiali the lion threw the anti-poison crystal into the door before it closed. Wuming also judged the level of the Yggdrasil, world tree, item in the moon-shaped world. World-level items were classified as EX, God-level items were classified as A, Legendary-level items were classified as B, Holy Relic items were classified as C, Heritage-level items were classified as D, and the highest-level items were classified as E. What do you think? Vicious woman. What other tricks do you have? Use them all. Mordred opened her helmet and put the crystal into her mouth. The crystal was not very big, and it just happened to fill her mouth. Then, Mordred closed her helmet and rushed toward Semiramis. Tisk! Semiramis spat in displeasure. She then activated a magic array around herself. The magic circle shot out countless magic bullets and magic lasers. Mordred dodged the magic lasers and used her sword to disperse the magic bullets. Then, she ran toward Semiramis. Following an even bigger magic circle, a huge beam of light swept towards Mordred, producing a large amount of flames. Mordred rushed out of the flames and shouted, "Is this all you've got?" Semiramis smiled. Then, several magic circles appeared, and several chains made of poisonous fog shot towards Mordred. Because she was in the air, Mordred could not dodge and was instantly entangled by the chains. Semiramis controlled the chains to swing Mordred around wantonly. Then, she smiled and said, "How does it feel to be a little bug?" Mordred cut off the chains and jumped to the ground. She instantly released her magic and rushed toward Semiramis, who was sitting on the throne, like a red lightning bolt. After dodging all the entangling chains, Mordred soared into the sky and shot toward Semiramis. "Got it!" Mordred shouted. Crash! Accompanied by the sound of rattling chains, Mordred was firmly entangled by several chains. The tip of her sword was still a few centimeters away from Semiramis, but these few centimeters were like a natural moat that couldn't be crossed. "You'd better return to the audience." Semiramis chuckled. A large amount of water burst out from her side and washed Mordred to the ground. A huge green fish that looked like a loach appeared from the water and rushed towards Mordred. As the daughter of the fish god, Semiramis had the ability to summon the divine fish of the gods. It opened its mouth, which was as tall as two people, and bit down viciously at Mordred. Mordred blocked its mouth with her sword and gathered red lightning in her other hand. She then shot it out and killed the divine fish. A large number of divine fish appeared from the water and tried to bite Mordred. Mordred held her sword with both hands and gathered her magic on the sword, causing it to emit red lightning. Finally, she released the lightning and killed the divine fish. Mordred had learned her lesson this time. She did not get close to the divine fish and activated her relic. Clarent, Blood Arthur. Suddenly, the hall was covered by red lightning. On the other hand, in the battle space that was specially designed for fighting, a flame and a meteor kept colliding in the air. Karna and Wuming were fighting fiercely. The entire space was almost destroyed. There was not a single piece of undamaged ground. Karna sometimes fought Wuming in close combat with his superb martial arts skills. Sometimes, he would use his relic to attack Wuming. Brahmastra, Brahma, cover the earth. On the other hand, Wuming was constantly fighting against Karna, constantly activating his noble artifacts to fight back. Silver. The hot spear tip and the surging sword tip were fighting each other. They were evenly matched. "No wonder you're a Villo of the Knights of the Round Table, the strongest knight," Karna said. "You flatter me, Karna. But I'm Sodric now, so don't be mistaken." Wuming stood not far from Karna and said, "You can't use all your abilities as a Villo now, right?" Karna suddenly asked. "Although I can't use all my abilities as a Villo, I can use all my abilities as a warrior. Do you want to try, Karna?" The two of them looked at each other with a faint smile on their faces. "Then I shall show you my hidden noble artifact, Brahmastra Kundala. Come on, Silver." A flame and a meteor collided. The two energy beams fell into a silent zone. Then, like a nuclear bomb exploding, a huge mushroom cloud burst out from the point of contact between the relic and their weapons. Chapter 87. Wu Ming and Karna stood in the middle of the battlefield, where the ground could no longer be seen. The two looked at each other. Even Brahmastra Kundala couldn't take you down, Karna said calmly. I didn't hear the surprise in that sentence, Wu Ming said with a smile. Karna just shook his head and said, you can block my Brahmastra Kundala, which means you are indeed the legendary British silver dragon Villo. Then he said, it seems that Sodric, the General of Salvation of France, is not you. No, it's your other identity, Villo. Wu Ming obviously noticed that Karna had a special skill, and he already knew that he was both Sodric and a Villo. Poor man's insight the ability to see through the other party's character and attribute, and not be deceived by verbal excuses and deceit. I once had the honor to ask the weak about their life and value, so I have the ability to see through the other party's character and attribute, Karna explained. You are not an evil person. In that case, the rumor that the Villo who transformed into the demonic dragon possessed Sodric is a rumor. No, it should be said that the Villo and Sodric are the same person, so the rumor is also correct. Wu Ming couldn't help but praise, as expected of Karna, the hero of charity. Yes, I am both Sodric and a Villo, but I am now summoned as Sodric, so I only have Sodric's skills and noble phantoms. Karna said, then, in order to show my respect, I will give you my strongest attack. After that, Karna's body began to ignite in flames. Upon closer inspection, the thin and sturdy golden armor on his body began to turn into flames. The flames gathered at the tip of the divine spear transformed from the Brahmastra. Is that so? Then I can't hide it anymore. As he spoke, Wu Ming also raised his silver knight sword. Comprehend the mercy of the King of Gods. Karna raised his spear, and the air around him began to heat up. Indra, watch carefully. The armor completely peeled off his body and turned into flames. The damaged ground around him began to melt. Extermination, this stab. The flames wrapped around the tip of the spear, forming a huge lightning spear. At this point, this place was already a sea of flames. Burn completely. A huge sun will shone behind him. Vasvi Shakti, O sun, submit to death. The stars hidden in the world. Meteor Silver's blade began to emit a white light, illuminating everything around it. A sacred sword that can wipe out all evil. Cracks appeared on the body of the sword, and an even more dazzling golden light burst forth from within. There's no need to cover your light anymore. The body of the sword was completely shattered, and a dazzling golden sword of light appeared. It was constantly floating, and the silver sword fragments were attached to the golden sword of light. Shine! The sword of light soared into the sky. Silver meteor. The unparalleled lightning collided with the dazzling starlight. The space somewhere in the sky garden gradually cracked. Sharon and Achilles were in an independent small world. Atlanta and Astolfo, Sieg, Frankenstein, and Cowles were in the residential area of the Sky Garden. Semiramis and Mordred between the thrones, and Gielli, the lion outside the door. Joan of Arc in the environment, and Shakespeare, who was playing the role of evil. Shiro Amakusa, who was about to walk out of the Great Holy Grail. These people all saw the scene and heard the sound of the world's destruction. Boom 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 boom. The cracked space directly exploded, and a huge amount of energy violently poured onto the Sky Garden. A large amount of light seemed to have turned into a substance, raging and destroying everything in the Sky Garden. Whether it was Achilles and Sharon who came out of the one-on-one space after removing the star of soaring skies Diatrico Asterolink. Atlanta, who realized the crisis and fled quickly, and Astolfo, Sieg, Frankenstein, and Cowles, who were carried by the eagle. They were all desperately running in the opposite direction of the light. To be precise, they were fleeing. Almost everyone used skills or noble phantoms. Achilles used his noble phantoms, which allowed him to pass through the vast battlefield in one breath. Even if there were obstacles in the field, his speed would not be reduced. Sharon used his skill, Divine Wisdom A+, to simulate his own skill as a centaur, 1,000-mile scamper. Divine Wisdom A+, except for the hero's unique skills, almost all skills, limited to ancient Greece, can be played with BA level proficiency. 1,000-mile scamper A has endless stamina for long-distance movement, and the agility parameter temporarily increases rapidly. It can also play the effect of increasing the endurance and strength parameter when running at full speed. Atlanta used her skill, Crossing Arcadia. Crossing Arcadia B can move across all obstacles in the field, including the enemy. Because on the edge of crisis, Atlanta did not use another skill, Aesthetics of Pursuit. Aesthetics of Pursuit C, let the enemy take the lead, and then you can take the lead after confirming the enemy's actions. Although the enemy ran first and she would overtake the enemy first, Atlanta did not dare to use this skill when the light behind her was spreading rapidly. If she did not run fast enough, it would be bad if the light caught up with her. Astolfo, on the other hand, let the eagle carry the four of them and used Hippogriff's trump card, Dimensional Jump. Dimension Jump, after releasing the true name, the eagle and its rider will switch into a blurry posture and disappear when the eagle screeches. It can escape all forms of observation in the world, and even reappear in other places. This ability could be called a bug-level ability, saving the lives of the four of them. No one knew how long it took, the light disappeared, and the original huge sky garden disappeared directly. The Great Holy Grail, which was originally in the center of the sky garden, was also exposed. Next to the Great Holy Grail was Joan of Arc and Shakespeare, who came out of the environment. The hall in the center of the throne was also exposed, revealing Semiramis, Mordred, who was covered in blood, and Gielli, whose body was pierced in many places. Everyone, whether they were servants or masters, looked at the huge sky fortress that was missing half with a trembling mind. Even Fiore and Gold in the distant Mylnia fortress noticed the magical anomaly of the sky garden. Semiramis had a special skill of double summoning, and she also had a caster class. As the noble phantoms of Semiramis' magic workshop, Hanging Garden of Babylon, evolved from the beliefs of many mistaken believers, so it was named Vanity. Because of that, the conditions to activate this noble phantoms were quite harsh. Not only did it require the wood, stone, minerals, plants, water, and other materials from the ruins near Iraq's capital, Baghra, where Semiramis lived, but it also required 3 days and 3 nights of non-stop chanting to complete it. It was really 3 days and 3 nights, that is, 72 hours. And now, this magnificent building was about to disappear once again. Chapter 88. Before that, Joan of Arc, who arrived at the Great Holy Grail earlier than anyone else, encountered the biggest irony in history. Oh, 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 oh. Joan of Arc, welcome to my stage, exclaimed Shakespeare, in a strange whisper, from Joan of Arc's environment. Joan of Arc looked at the changing scene around her and frowned. This is my hometown, Domremy. Joan of Arc looked at her clothes that had changed into a village girl style and looked at the small village not far away. Jean. A gentle female voice came. Joan of Arc turned to look at the source of the voice. Mother. Joan of Arc was a little surprised. She didn't expect this environment to be so realistic. Why are you called a witch and burned to death? Why? Jean. Joan of Arc's mother cried and crawled on the ground, her hands holding Joan of Arc tightly. Come back to the village with me, Jean, don't worry about other people anymore. Joan of Arc's mother pleaded. But Joan of Arc didn't pay attention to her mother, not because Joan of Arc was unfilial, but because the environment in front of her was just created by Red Caster Shakespeare. Red Team's caster, are you satisfied with this? Jean said calmly. Then Shakespeare's voice sounded in the air. No, the drama has just begun. Let's begin the second act. When Shakespeare's voice fell, Joan of Arc found that there were two curtains in front of her, like the curtain on the opening and the closing stage. One opened. When the curtain opened, the scene in front of Joan of Arc changed again. Joan of Arc stood on a high ground, holding the holy flag in her hand, commanding the French soldiers behind her to rush to the British enemy. For a time, the entire battlefield was covered with blood, and a lot of lives were constantly lost. Some people begged for mercy, but they were still killed. In an instant, Joan of Arc was full of dead bodies. It's covered with blood, Your Highness Saintess. Shakespeare's voice sounded in the air. However, Joan of Arc didn't have much of a reaction to this. It's useless to show me anything. Joan of Arc then raised her hand and looked at it. Since the hands of those who follow me are dirty, then my hands are dirty, and I have never felt fear of this. Suddenly, as if a corpse had come back to life, a gorgeously dressed corpse suddenly sat up, but that face was Shakespeare's. He looked at Joan of Arc and asked, "Then, let me ask you as the representative of Charles VII." Then a corpse beside Joan of Arc suddenly raised its head. Needless to say, it was another Shakespeare's face. You stepped forward bravely and went to the battlefield. Dirty my hands with blood and win back France. Then the corpses around her raised their heads and asked Joan of Arc, "However, you were burned at the stake in the end. How sad is this? In my opinion, this is betrayal, tragedy, despair. Even so, do you still believe in the Lord? Do you still think that fighting is meaningful?" However, Jean still turned a blind eye to these and replied calmly, "Of course. My death is a fate that I have never escaped." Then Joan of Arc raised the holy flag in her hand and said, "Since I raised this flag, I have lost the right to die peacefully in my hometown." For Joan of Arc, who was not affected in the slightest, Shakespeare was not disappointed. One of the corpses snapped his fingers, and the scene changed. Joan of Arc looked at herself in a prisoner's uniform, her hands were handcuffed, and the handcuffs were connected to this rope. She was led forward by a knight riding a horse in front of her. In this way, how could Joan of Arc not know where she was now? What a bad taste, Castor. Joan of Arc said sarcastically to Shakespeare. No, 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 this time it's not you, Lady Saint. The knight riding the horse in front turned back and looked at Joan of Arc. Sure enough, it was another Shakespeare's face. Shakespeare pointed to the front, and Joan of Arc looked in the direction he pointed. Joan of Arc's pupils shrank slightly. Sauterlech. Yes, it was Joan of Arc's childhood friend, General Sauterlech, or Wuming, who was burned at the stake in this illusion. Wuming's eyes were lifeless as he was tied to a pillar by iron chains. The flames around his body were burning fiercely. Joan of Arc hurriedly ran over, but when she was still a certain distance away from Wuming, she was pulled by the rope in her hand. Why? Why didn't you burn me? Joan of Arc hurriedly asked a priest standing under the execution platform. The priest looked back at Joan of Arc with Shakespeare's face, took out his noble phantasm, and replied to Joan of Arc, "The fantasy constructed by my noble phantasm is your memory, that is to say, the death of General Sauterlech is your idea, Saint Joan of Arc." Shakespeare's last words hit Joan of Arc's heart, and she began to panic. No, no, how could it be? Joan of Arc couldn't help but think of the scene where Sauterlech rushed to her with wounds all over his body and was burned to death with her. Is it really me? And Shakespeare said like a kidnapper, "Yes, yes. It's all your fault." At this moment, an incomparably terrifying magical power came this way in Shakespeare's perception. Because this magical power was so terrifying that even Joan of Arc, who was in the illusion, noticed it. The illusion where Joan of Arc was shattered like a mirror, and it instantly shattered. What? My noble phantasm is actually Outside, Shakespeare and Joan of Arc still stood in place. However, on the other side of the hall, the originally gorgeous hall suddenly lost a piece, revealing a vast sky. "This magical power is Soderlek," Joan of Arc said. At this moment, Joan of Arc, who had escaped from the illusion created by Shakespeare's noble phantasm, "The hour of the play has arrived, and here shall be thunderous applause," would no longer be deceived by Shakespeare's rhetoric. In comparison, at this moment, Shakespeare had lost his noble phantasm. Subsequently, the floating fortress, hanging garden of Babylon, which had lost half of its power, had completely lost its ability to float. Although the central area had been slightly damaged, this little bit would not be of any help to the Sky Garden, which had lost half of its floating ability. The reason why the floating garden could float was because of the inverted magic inside. Whether it was water or plants, they would flow and grow in the opposite direction. The water would flow from top to bottom, and the plants would stay from bottom to top. At this moment, in the central area with the Great Holy Grail, a large amount of water began to fly to the sky. After leaving the magic range of the floating garden, it fell to the ground. Not only the water, but a large number of broken buildings began to fall to the ground. The remaining half of the floating garden was also on the verge of collapse, slowly falling to the ground. It was getting faster and faster until it fell to the forest below, making a sound like an earthquake. A large amount of smoke and dust rose to the sky, and it lasted for a long time. Chapter 89. Amidst the ruins of a large number of buildings, a hand suddenly reached out from one of the taller ruins. Accompanied by a burst of debris and dirt, Wuming struggled to crawl out. Wuming was covered in wounds, and his broken armor was almost completely gone. Wuming panted heavily and looked ahead tiredly. He saw another hand reaching out from the taller ruins. However, compared to Wuming who struggled to climb out, this figure was more illusory and weak. After getting out of the ruins, he half-squatted on the ground. Karna could no longer stand. After all, compared to Wuming who did not sacrifice any defense, Karna had stripped off the armor that was connected to his skin to form Karna's most powerful noble artifact, Sun Wheel, Obedient Death, Vasvi Shakti. In the Hindu mythological narrative Mahabharata, Karna was willing to strip off his armor and give it to the Thunder Emperor Indra because he knew that he had been tricked. Indra was moved and gave Karna a divine spear that could kill everything with one hit. The noble artifact that evolved from it became Karna's strongest defense and received a certain degree of damage to obtain his most powerful attack. However, because his body was already damaged and had no defense, under the aftermath of the collision between Sun Wheel, Obedient Death, Vasvi Shakti, and Meteor Silver Meteor, Karna's injuries were more serious than Wuming's. Even his spirit core was slightly cracked. Cough. As expected of the legendary knight Vilo, Saranth. What a beautiful attack, cough cough cough. Karna said to Wuming with a weak smile. It was obvious that Karna was having a good time even though he was in a terrible state. Wuming also smiled happily and said, "You don't have to flatter me, Karna. If it weren't for the fact that the virtual space we were in prevented the explosion from spreading, you wouldn't have been so badly injured." Wuming was right. Because the virtual space was comparable to an inherent barrier, the aftermath of Wuming and Karna's noble artifacts did not cause it to explode. As a result, the aftermath of the explosion caused secondary damage to Wuming and Karna, which was why they were in such a sorry state. It was like comparing the damage caused by a bomb exploding in a narrow room with the damage caused by an explosion in an open space. Wuming was not so bad. Although he was not in his true form, he still had the protection of his incomplete dragon scales, so his spirit core was not damaged. However, he was still injured. Cough cough. I've heard of the Star Holy Sword X Silver. Now that I've seen it, its power is indeed extraordinary. In the face of Karna's praise, Wuming felt a little helpless, and blushed inwardly. After all, Wuming did not have this noble artifact in the first place. Wuming, who was in the real world of Wuming, did not have this noble artifact. Even Wuming, who was in the real world of Villo, did not have this noble artifact. This noble artifact evolved from one of Wuming's skills with the help of suppression. Miracle, legendary. Dragon, legendary. Miracle, legendary. Before Wuming faced Karna's strongest attack, he had the belief that he had to win, which led to the activation of this skill. In addition, the suppression of the world where Wuming was in had a special relationship with Wuming, so to a certain extent, it supported Wuming, allowing him to obtain an evolved noble artifact. Silver Meteor, X Silver Meteor, Level, EX Type, Evil Noble Artifact Distance. Maximum Catch. This was a treasure created by the suppression of the planet. The Sacred Star Sword, which had been released from its suppression, had the effect of judging the enemy as evil. As long as the enemy was the owner's enemy or someone who had to be defeated, the Sacred Star Sword would give the enemy the attribute of evil. The target of the judgment was both a person and an object. Even concepts such as space and time could be included in the judgment. Because the noble artifact was a part of himself, Wuming immediately used it after obtaining it. He was not unfamiliar with it at all. The suppression knew that Wuming, who was in the real world of Wuming, would not be able to defeat Karna, so it forcibly added a noble artifact to Wuming by relying on Wuming's wait for me skill, Miracle. After all, the character of Sodlek was created by the suppression of history. Adding a noble artifact at the last minute was not a big deal to the suppression. If Wuming, who was in the real world of Villo, had been able to tie with Karna, he would have had a mysterious buff. However, as a Sodlek, Wuming did not have many mysteries, so he really could not fight against the powerful and mysterious Karna. As the origin dragon, Soren was someone whom the two suppression forces had to curry favor with, so he had to be a good host in his own world. It was precisely because of this that Wuming could be considered to have defeated Karna. It was also because of this that Wuming blushed. Although the suppression had good intentions, Wuming was not someone who could not accept defeat. Wuming was not that thick-skinned to be praised by the enemy for defeating him with a power that did not belong to him. However, he could not say that. After all, X-Silver was Wuming's noble artifact, and X-Silver Meteor was an evolved noble artifact that was forcibly catalyzed by the planet's suppression force and the human suppression force. Even without the suppression force's interference, Wuming's X-Silver could still evolve into X-Silver Meteor or an evolved noble artifact that was as powerful as X-Silver Meteor. This was also the reason why Wuming did not hesitate to use X-Silver Meteor. It would be his sooner or later, so it did not matter if it was earlier or later. After all, Wuming was not a heroic spirit that could not grow. Wuming himself could grow, including a part of his noble artifact. Karna could also see that Wuming was a little embarrassed. Although he did not know why, he immediately changed the topic. "Can you grant me a request, Your Excellency Siren thought." Karna no longer called Wuming Sodric. After all, the power that defeated him was from the Villo. "Please speak." Wuming looked at Karna, who was about to disappear, and nodded. Even if Karna asked, Wuming would find a way to help Karna. After all, this was not a glorious victory. The original master of the red team was caught by assassin with poison. Although the Sky Garden was destroyed and fell, the room where my original master and the others were in was on the other side of the undestroyed Sky Garden. Even if the Sky Garden fell, I don't know if they are okay. Please go there and help me check the situation. If possible, please save them. Wuming was stunned, but he immediately reacted. Then, Wuming smiled. As expected of Karna, the hero of charity. "I'll go now." Wuming dragged his broken body to the direction Karna pointed out. Karna, who stayed in place, turned into light and disappeared after his spirit core was completely shattered. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.